Hello everyone, I'm the DreamTeller and I'm here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. I remember the exact moment I felt it. I was on my couch, still half damp from the rain I'd run through earlier. The wind rattled the panes, and a hollow groan crept through the hallway behind me. Nothing unusual for an old house in stormy weather, I told myself. But as my eyes darted across the room, just a nervous habit these days, I caught sight of the leather armchair. It looked the same as always. That faded mustard brown upholstery, those creases and scratches on its surface. It was a piece I never used, never even touched. Something about it just felt stale, off. It had come with the house, part of an inheritance from a distant uncle I'd hardly known. I kept telling myself I'd get rid of it eventually, but I never did. Now I regretted that, because that night, I could swear the seat was sinking under someone's weight. Invisible, sure, but unmistakably there. My heart started pounding. I tried blinking away the impression. Maybe it was the storm playing tricks on the shadows, the dim lamp behind me flickering just a bit, or the reflection of lightning across the polished floor. But no, the leather cushion, always a bit stiff, was dipping inward as if bearing the load of a heavy body. I tried to dismiss it and turned back toward the TV, pretending to focus on some late-night rerun. Yet I felt eyes on me, if eyes could exist without a face. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight as nails. I remember shifting on my couch cushion, feeling the cheap fabric brush against my arms, trying to calm my breathing. There was this faint smell in the air, something like old leather mixed with damp earth. I could hear the faint squeak of that armchair's springs. I knew this house was old, full of quirks, but this was different. I felt my palms sweating, my toes curling against the rug's rough fibers. I tried to ignore it, but soon the sound got clearer. A subtle creaking, as if whoever sat there was adjusting their posture. I stood up slowly and took a step closer. I didn't want to, but some foolish part of me needed to confirm what I was seeing. The wood floor beneath me complained with each step, and I wondered if the invisible guest could hear it too. Reaching the edge of the coffee table, I squinted. The cushion was definitely pressed down. Then, almost imperceptibly, it lifted and sank again, like someone shifting their weight from one side to another. I swallowed hard, feeling my throat dry. There was no outline, just the indent, proof enough. I retreated to the couch, breathing heavily. My chest felt tight. Outside, the rain intensified, hammering the windows. The storm's rumble seemed to circle the house. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the foam inside the cushion was defective, maybe moisture had warped the chair's frame. But none of that explained the rhythmic movement, the slow rocking. My heart wouldn't settle. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on my couch staring, occasionally flicking my gaze to the hallway, to the locked front door, then back to the armchair. The lights inside flickered once or twice, probably the storm messing with the old wiring. I tried to distract myself. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolled through messages. No signal. Typical for these storms out here. The old family home was a bit isolated, a rustic retreat, my uncle had called it in his will. I came here to escape a messy divorce and a pile of debts, hoping to find peace. Instead, I'd found this thing. As the hours dragged, I tried closing my eyes, hoping when I opened them that the chair would be normal. But whenever I peeked, the invisible sitter was still there. By dawn, the rain had subsided. The air smelled of wet leaves. My eyes were gritty and sore. I stood, stretching my stiff back, and decided I'd get rid of the damn chair. I wasn't even going to donate it. I'd toss it outside in the mud, let it rot. I marched over to the front door, my socks sliding a bit on the floorboards. Grabbing the knob, I twisted. It didn't budge. That was odd. The lock wasn't even engaged. I tried pulling harder, putting my shoulder into it. Nothing. I walked to the kitchen door, also stuck. The windows were sealed shut, as always, but now even the hinges wouldn't give. This place was old, yes, but I'd never had trouble opening doors before. Frustration and fear mingled in my gut. I returned to the living room, determined to push that armchair out of the way, maybe knock it over. But as I approached, I heard it. A deep wooden groan from inside the structure, like old bones protesting. And then I saw the backrest, the old leather folds shifting as if someone were leaning back, making themselves comfortable. I felt a sudden chill on my left shoulder, like icy fingertips. I jerked away, spinning around, but found nothing, just the stale air and my own panicked breath. I didn't dare sit down again. Instead, I stood, pacing back and forth. My arms were crossed tight over my chest, my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Morning light filtered weakly through the rain-streaked windows, giving the room a sickly yellow tint. I noticed for the first time a small discoloration on the floor near the chair's feet. I knelt down and touched it. The wood there felt colder, and as I rubbed my fingertips together, it left a slight oily residue. I wiped my hand on my jeans, feeling disgust and fear coil inside me. I needed more information. Maybe there was something in my uncle's old paperwork. He'd left a bunch of boxes in the storage closet. I rummaged through them, flipping through old receipts, letters, and photos. Nothing that explained the chair directly, but I found a photograph of the living room dated decades ago. The same armchair was there, placed in the exact same spot. A man sat in it, his features blurred by age and poor lighting, but I could make out a stern face, a stiff posture. On the back of the photo, in my uncle's scrawling handwriting, I read, "Don't move it. Ever." A shiver ran down my spine. I glanced at the chair from the hallway. I could see the top of its backrest, so still yet, inhabited. The house creaked as if mocking me. "Don't move it." That line swirled in my head. Did my uncle know about this? Is that why he left me this place? I clenched my fists, heart thudding. The smell was stronger now, like old hide and something sour underneath. By midday, I was exhausted. I tried resting on the couch again, but every time I settled, I felt that cold presence behind me. At one point, I could have sworn something brushed my hair aside, gently, like a dead hand grazing my scalp. I leapt up, knocking my knee on the coffee table, cursing out loud. The chair remained silent. Its cushion formed around an invisible figure. My eyes watered from pain and fear. Desperate, I attempted to cover the chair with a sheet. I found an old white cloth in the linen drawer and approached slowly. The wooden floor felt like ice beneath my bare feet. As I threw the sheet over the armchair, it caught on something, on nothing, mid-air, like it had snagged on a shoulder. A muffled hiss escaped my throat as I pulled it, forcing it down. The sheet draped unevenly, but for a moment I saw it, a faint outline of a form beneath the white fabric. A human shape, bulky and slumped. My heart pounded so violently I could hardly stand. Then, as I stared, the sheet dipped where the head should be, as if someone tilting their head up toward me. I stepped back, and the sheet slid off on its own, falling silently to the floor. I ran to the front door and pulled again, screamed at it, kicked it. I tried a window, wouldn't budge. The phone was useless. The power flickered. The house hummed with tension, as if holding its breath. Evening came, and the shadows grew longer. I found myself whispering to it, pleading, "What do you want?" My voice sounded shaky, foreign in my ears. I circled the room, the only light coming from a single lamp in the corner. The armchair's leather caught the faint glow, highlighting the dents, the scratches. Were they always that deep? At one point, I considered burning it. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a box of matches. My hands trembled so badly I dropped half of them on the floor. I returned, stood in front of the chair and lit a match. The tiny flame flickered. The presence remained motionless. I brought the match closer, but a sudden gust of cold air snuffed it out. Another match. The same result. It was as if something gently blew from inside that invisible occupant, calmly asserting control. A wave of nausea hit me, and I staggered to the bathroom, retching into the sink. I splashed water on my face. My reflection stared back. Wide eyes, sweaty forehead, stubble looking darker than usual. As I glanced at the mirror, I swore I saw something behind me. A faint silhouette in the doorway. I spun around, nothing there. But the reflection, a second before I turned, had shown a vague outline of a head and shoulders hovering near the bathroom doorframe. Heart hammering, I stepped back into the hall, moving as quietly as I could. The house felt different now, as if the walls were leaning in. In the living room, I noticed something new. The armchair was turned slightly, no longer facing the TV. It was angled toward me. The floorboards creaked under my weight, and I smelled that sour musk again. An image flashed in my mind. The photograph of that stern-faced man. Was he still here? Stuck somehow? Night fell hard and heavy. Rain started again, tapping insistently at the window. I paced in circles, massaging my temples. My legs felt weak, and there was a sharp ache between my shoulder blades. Every time I looked at the chair, I saw it shifting minutely, the leather rippling as if breathing. I tried to push aside the coffee table, but it got wedged against a floorboard. My frustration boiled over. I shouted, my voice cracking, "Leave me alone." The only response was a gentle squeak of the springs. My knees wobbled, and I collapsed onto the couch. I felt something grip my shoulder, firm and cold. I screamed and lurched forward, but nothing was there. The pressure left a lingering chill spreading through my muscles, making them twitch. Time dragged on. My eyelids drooped, but I couldn't fully rest. Every time I drifted off, I'd hear a soft whispering sound, like leather whispering secrets. Once I dared to look directly at the chair and spotted in the reflection of the glass cabinet door behind it a faint silhouette. In that glassy surface, there was a suggestion of a head, broad shoulders, and hands gripping the armrests. I froze, my pulse thundering in my ears. The reflection seemed more defined in that moment, still blurry, but there. When I looked back at the chair itself, there was nothing visible, only the indent. As the hours passed, my thoughts spiraled. I wanted out. I wanted freedom. I even tried breaking a window with a chair from the dining room, but the glass wouldn't shatter. It was like hitting solid stone. I turned back and found the armchair shifted again, now almost facing me squarely. I couldn't escape its gaze, if it had one. It dominated the room. I felt watched, judged, pinned down. Eventually, I realized I couldn't win. The house wouldn't let me leave, and the chair wouldn't release me from its presence. I dropped onto the floor, breathing heavily, tears prickling my eyes. The storm outside raged on, and inside I was trapped in a silent war with something that didn't need words. My mind raced. Maybe if I pretended to sleep? Maybe if I submitted somehow? In the final hours of that torturous night, I slumped against the wall, my body shaking with silent sobs. I lifted my head and looked at the cabinet's glass door one more time. The silhouette was clearer now, just for a second. A broad figure, leaning forward, as if examining me with dark curiosity. I blinked and it vanished, leaving only the empty room reflected. But that reflection disturbed me. The armchair was reflected as empty, yet the cushion in real life still bore weight. It was as though the reflection mocked me, revealing what should be while I endured what was. Dawn's gray light crept through the windows. My lips were chapped, my throat raw. I tried the front door once more. This time the knob turned. The door opened easily. No resistance. Outside, the world looked normal. Wet grass, distant trees, a pale sky. I dragged myself out, stumbling a few steps into the muddy yard. When I looked back, the armchair was still there inside, framed by the doorway. I swore I saw a hint of movement, but I turned away, heart pounding, and slammed the door shut. I never went back inside that house. I ended up leaving the property entirely, driving away as soon as I could start my car. Days later, I found myself flinching at small noises, checking over my shoulder for a presence that wasn't there. In store windows, I sometimes caught a glimpse of my reflection and thought I saw something else lurking just behind me. My skin never stopped feeling a little colder, as though touched by phantom fingers. Even now, as I write this from a cramped motel room, I see faint shapes and shiny surfaces, hints of what might have followed me. The memory of that armchair and its invisible occupant weighs on me. When I close my eyes, I feel the cold pressure on my shoulder again and hear the creak of old leather. I know I left that house behind, but I'm not sure I left it empty. Something remains, some lingering presence that refuses to loosen its grip. And I fear the next time I catch my own reflection, I might see it behind me once more. I remember the first night I spent in that old house, how my breath sounded too loud against the silence. Even now, lying awake in the attic's half-light, I feel a dryness in my mouth, and the thin hairs on my forearms prickle as if charged with static. I hold a small flashlight clenched between my teeth, my arms elbow-deep in a dusty crate filled with newspapers and bent nails. The air tastes of old wood and mold. I've barely settled here. Only a few days since I left the last place, the noisy apartment near the highway. But something about this new home already pushes at the back of my skull, telling me I should never have come. When I first saw the house, the realtor brushed off my questions. Yes, it was old. Yes, the previous owner vanished or passed away, she wasn't clear. But the price was good and I needed a fresh start. I should have trusted my gut when I first saw that peeling wallpaper in the stairwell, the crooked chandelier in the living room. The place felt hollow, like a shell. Now I'm here, in the attic, trying to avoid a ragged lump of fabric draped over something in the corner. My eyes keep drifting to it. Earlier that day, I noticed the large object hidden there, a tall shape, human height, covered in an old grayish-white sheet. At first, I thought it might be a painting or a dressing mirror. I didn't bother it then, too preoccupied with setting up my bed downstairs and unpacking just enough clothes to get by. Tonight, though, something woke me, a soft creak directly above my bedroom ceiling. I climbed the narrow attic stairs, heart pounding a little, determined to find a reasonable explanation. Maybe a loose window frame or a settling beam. But when I opened the attic door, the air felt somehow thicker, as though I had stepped into a room that was breathing. My flashlight beam danced over wooden beams and old furniture. And that's when I heard it again, a faint, drawn-out creaking sound, so gentle it could have been the floorboards expanding. Yet it felt more like a whisper calling me closer. I swallow hard. The sheet-covered shape stands in the far corner, half hidden behind stacked chairs. It's impossible to ignore now. My legs feel stiff, my palms damp. I approach and grab the top edge of the dusty cloth. It comes away, billowing a cloud of gray particles into my face. I cough, rub my eyes. Beneath the cloth, a large mirror leans against the wall. The wood frame is carved with strange swirls, some chipped away by time, and the glass is uneven, slightly warped, with a small crack running diagonally at one corner. I angle the flashlight onto myself, peering into the reflection. My own face looks pale and thin, my eyes ringed with tired shadows. But behind my reflection, there is something else, some kind of shape. I lean closer. At first, I think it's a smudge, a stain on the mirror's surface. But no, it's a figure standing behind me in the reflection, indistinct, with what looks like a hat pressed low over its forehead. The eyes are dark hollows. I whip around, shining the flashlight behind me. Nothing, just old chairs and a trunk. I turn back to the mirror. The figure is still there, as if it is standing right over my shoulder. My throat tightens and I feel a tremor in my left hand. I move the flashlight from side to side, trying to see if it's a trick of light. The figure in the mirror doesn't change, doesn't shift. I can't see its face clearly, but I sense that it's smiling, or at least that it wants to. I grab the sheet, toss it back over the mirror, and stumble toward the attic door. The wood planks groan under my hurried steps. In my room downstairs, I lie awake on the mattress, breathing shallowly, waiting for morning. Every time I close my eyes, I see that figure behind me. The silence in the house feels thicker now, pressing against my eardrums. By the next day's light, I try to rationalize it. The attic is dim, the mirror old and warped. Maybe I saw my own outline distorted and mistook it for someone else. I force myself up to the attic again around noon. The air is stuffy. I pull the sheet off once more, half expecting to see that shape immediately. But now the mirror only shows me, hunched slightly, blinking sweat from my eyes. I examine my face. I'm older than I'd like to admit, with a rough beard. As I stare, something feels off. My beard looks unruly, as if certain hairs are twisting in ways they shouldn't. I smooth my hand over my chin. The reflection hesitates before mirroring my action. A chill rips down my spine. It's subtle, but I could swear my reflection's hand moved a fraction slower than mine. I lean in close, pressing my nose near the glass. A faint crack at the corner splits my reflection's forehead. And then, as I stare into my eyes, I see the shape again, faint behind my shoulder. A presence that should not be there. I stumble back. I throw the sheet over the mirror again. For a moment, I consider getting rid of it. But how? It's large, heavy, and who would take it? Maybe I could drag it to the curb, leave it for the garbage collectors, but something about it makes me hesitate. I convince myself I'm overreacting and head back down, trying to focus on normal tasks. Unpacking kitchen utensils, checking the mailbox. The outside world seems quiet, normal. But there's an itch in the back of my head all day. By evening, I'm exhausted. I try to sleep early. The mattress on the bedroom floor feels lumpy. I keep the bedside lamp on. Just as I'm about to doze off, I hear it. The same soft creaking from above, the same gentle call. My heart kicks into a faster rhythm. I toss and turn, sweat damping the collar of my t-shirt. Around midnight, I swear I hear a muffled laugh, like someone laughing behind a closed door without sound. I sit up, breathing hard, my mouth dry. The air tastes stale. I push myself to check the attic again. This time, I carry my hammer, feeling foolish. The attic door swings open silently. The sheet over the mirror stirs slightly as if touched by a breeze, but there's no open window here. I approach slowly and yank the sheet down. My reflection looks back at me, pale, drawn, and something is different about my face. My beard appears longer on one side, the hairs twisting at unnatural angles, my left eye drooping slightly, as if I've aged 10 years overnight. I run my hand over my cheek. It feels normal, but in the glass it appears warped. My reflection smiles, just barely, while my own lips remain pressed together. It's smiling without me. I stagger back. My breath comes fast. The figure behind me is there again, closer now, the outline sharper. That hat, those eyes, like hollow pits. My reflection's face twitches, a silent laughter. I swear I see the reflection's shoulder move, as if it's reaching toward the figure behind me to link arms. I spin around, hammer raised. Nothing, just empty air. I drop the sheet over the mirror and run downstairs, barely able to keep my footing. I collapse onto a kitchen chair, head in my hands, heart pounding. I need to leave this house, I tell myself. But I have no place else to go. The deal I got here was final, and I'm low on money. Besides, it's the middle of the night. Who would I call? Eventually I decide I'll deal with it in the morning. Maybe I can break the mirror. Yes, that's it. Smash it to pieces. But even as I think this, a surge of nausea hits me. The idea of shattering the glass, of releasing whatever lurks behind it, makes my stomach twist. My forehead beads with sweat. I try to calm down, sipping water straight from the tap, feeling the cool liquid slide down my throat. By the time I return to bed, I can't sleep. Every creak of the old house sounds like a footstep. My scalp prickles. My reflection, changed and mocking, haunts me. I don't know how much time passes before I drift off into a shallow, uneasy doze. The next morning, light filters weakly through the dusty windows. I feel heavy, my limbs sore as if I've been wrestling in my dreams. I head to the bathroom. The mirror over the sink is small, normal. My face looks okay, tired, but normal. No twisted beard hairs. I lift a hand to my cheek and laugh nervously. Maybe it was all in my head. Determined, I return to the attic with a plan. I bring a thick blanket. I'll wrap the mirror and haul it downstairs, put it in the garage. Maybe I can throw it out. The attic is silent now, beams of sunlight cutting through the dust. I pull the sheet off carefully. My heart jolts. I see my reflection. There's no mysterious figure behind me at the moment, but my reflection's eyes look hollow, as if the skin around them sank overnight. My beard, normal to the touch, appears patchy and uneven in the glass. My reflection tilts its head slightly, lagging a half-second behind my real movement. My stomach flips. I feel the sweat on my palms, the back of my neck tingling. I reach out, pressing my fingertips against the mirror's surface. It's cold, so cold that it stings. For a split second, I feel something push back from inside. My reflection's mouth opens in a silent laugh. I yank my hand away. The attic floor creaks, louder this time, and I sense movement behind me. I don't dare turn around. I stare into the mirror's surface and see the hat, the deep-set eyes emerging at the edge of the frame. It's getting closer. My reflection is caught between me and that figure. Or maybe I'm caught between them. My heart pounds. If I try to smash it now, what if that thing steps through? If I try to run, I'll never be free of this. I have to do something. My hand shakes as I grab the heavy blanket, my breath's coming fast and shallow. The figure is inches away in the reflection, looming behind my distorted face. I can almost feel its breath on my neck. I lunge forward, throwing the blanket over the mirror. The moment the glass is covered, the attic falls silent. No creaking. I drag the mirror away from the wall, knocking over a pile of chairs. Dust fills my lungs, making me cough. The mirror is heavier than I expected, and as I tilt it forward, I hear a faint scraping, like nails on glass from the other side. I nearly drop it. I can't stop shaking. My vision blurs with sweat. Step by step, I wrestle it down the attic stairs. Each step groans beneath our weight. When I reach the first-floor hallway, I feel a surge of relief. I lean the covered mirror against a wall near the garage door. My heart is still hammering, but at least it's farther from my bedroom. Maybe I'll drive it to the dump. But I'm terrified to uncover it again. Terrified to see my own face twisted and that thing behind me. Night falls slowly. I eat a can of cold soup, barely tasting it. The silence is heavy. Before bed, I pass through the hallway. The covered mirror stands there, silent. I keep a wide berth. I wake in darkness to soft laughter, still silent, but I feel it in my bones. My hands tremble uncontrollably. I open the bedroom door a crack. The hall is dim. A street lamp outside casts just enough light to see the outline of the mirror under the blanket. The shape seems taller now, leaning forward as if listening. My stomach turns. I approach it with cautious steps. I reach out, placing my hand on the cloth. Beneath it, the surface is cold. I can feel something pressing outward, a subtle bulge. The crack in the glass. I remember it clearly. Did it grow larger? I lift the cloth's edge by just an inch. Inside the darkness, I see my reflection's eye, staring back. But it's not aligned with my face. It's offset, half sliding off where it should be, and behind it, the edge of a hat, a grin in the shadow. They're waiting for a moment of weakness to pull me inside, to trade places. I let the cloth drop. My breathing is ragged. I can't destroy it, can't look at it, can't leave it. I feel the blood pounding in my ears. I back away, stumbling to my room. I close the door and sit on the floor, sweat trickling down my spine. I know I'll never truly be safe. My reflection's face is inside that mirror, twisted and laughing without sound. Even now, I swear I can see the faint shine of glass at the edges of the dark doorframe, as if the mirror's presence seeps through the walls. My skin crawls. I rub my cheeks, feeling for any sign of distortion. They feel normal, but when I flick on the lamp and glance at my small pocket mirror, I swear my beard looks slightly uneven. My eye seems a bit sunken. I close the pocket mirror quickly, heart pounding. The night stretches on and I don't dare sleep. Every so often I hear that gentle creak, as if the attic floor still calls, or the sound of fingernails scraping behind a sheet. And somewhere in the darkness, just out of sight, the reflection waits, hungry, patient, ready to catch me off guard. I don't know if I can resist forever, but for now, I sit here, trembling, heart racing, and pray that dawn's light can hold it at bay for just one more day. I'm not sure what first drew me closer. Maybe it was the faint scraping of something against the floorboards or the whisper of stale air slipping through the gaps in old, rotting wood. All I know is that, despite my every instinct screaming for me to stay upstairs, I stand here now, staring down that dim corridor in the basement of the antique store. I work here, sure, but I've never felt at home in this place. It's my boss's property, not mine, and it's crammed with heirlooms and oddities I've spent weeks cataloging. Yet this corridor, tucked behind a heavy stack of mahogany chairs, has always felt like it didn't belong at all. It's too quiet, too narrow, and something about it makes my skin feel tight as if stretched over a frame not quite my own. I strain my ears and hear something like a sigh, but I can't be certain. My flashlight beam skims over worn Persian rugs, their patterns half erased by time and footsteps. The scent down here is thick with dust and a coppery tang I can't place. I run a hand over my scalp, feeling the sweat gather at my hairline. I haven't told anyone about my feelings toward this corridor. My boss would laugh, and the other employees, well, they're mostly seasonal help, kids who aren't here often enough to notice anything strange. The first time I wandered down here was by accident. I was reorganizing a batch of old clocks when I moved a dresser and discovered the narrow wooden door. The door had no lock, just a simple latch, and behind it was a set of steps leading downward. I told myself it was just another part of the basement, maybe a forgotten storage area. But the instant I stepped through, I felt a subtle pressure in the air. The corridor seemed to breathe differently than the rest of the shop. I remember shining my flashlight around and seeing those shelves with old grimoires, thick, leather-bound volumes with cracked spines and strange symbols embossed on their covers. I remember the stone sculptures placed at intervals along the walls. They depicted faces caught in expressions of sheer terror, mouths agape, eyes bulging, cheeks sunken. The stone looked moist, as if it had wept at some point. I passed by them quickly, skin crawling, and swore I heard low voices speaking in tongues I couldn't identify. Sharp consonants, hissing vowels, all blending into a background of madness. I retreated that day, my heart pounding so hard I felt my ribs would split. I tried to forget about it. For a few days I stuck to my usual tasks, sorting tea sets, labeling silverware, dusting porcelain dolls. But at night, as I lay in the cramped room I rent above the store, my mind drifted back down to that corridor, to those grimoires and sculptures. Something down there wanted me to return. The next morning, I found myself staring at the closed door in the basement, my pulse pounding. I told myself I'd just look, nothing more. I carried a small camera in my pocket, hoping to take pictures, rationalize what I had seen. Maybe I'd find a manufacturer's mark on the sculptures or a date in one of the grimoires that would explain everything. The second time I entered, the corridor seemed somehow longer. I don't know if it's just my mind playing tricks, but I swear it took more steps to reach the point where the first sculpture stood. My flashlight revealed the same Persian rugs, this time appearing slightly rearranged, their fringes pointing in directions I hadn't noticed before. The grimoires, still sealed by rusted clasps, called out silently. I put a hand on one, meaning to open it, but a sudden whisper, right at my ear, froze me. I spun around, only to see empty air. Yet the sculptures had shifted. Before, the one nearest me had been facing the opposite wall. Now it pointed straight at me, its hollow stone eyes fixed on mine. My stomach twisted. I stumbled back, heart thumping, and practically ran out of there. For the rest of the week, I avoided the corridor. I tried to stay busy upstairs, rearranging antiques in the showroom. I even scrubbed the front windows, something I usually put off. At night, I locked my bedroom door and slept with the lamp on. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the corridor was waiting for me, that it was disappointed I hadn't come back, as if I'd broken some unspoken agreement. 4 days later, I gathered my courage and descended once again. This time I noticed something new. At the far end of the corridor, past several layers of rugs and shelves, stood a tall oval mirror. I hadn't seen it before. Its frame was wrought iron, twisted into shapes that looked almost like letters. I took a few steps closer, the beam of my flashlight trembling against the dim light. When I got near enough to see my reflection, I nearly screamed. My reflection was there, but it seemed slightly delayed, as if reacting to my movements a fraction of a second too late. I raised my hand. It hesitated before doing the same. My breath went shallow, my chest tight. I thought I saw shapes behind me in the glass, shadowy figures half-formed, hunched low, mouths whispering silent syllables. I backed away, tripping over one of the rugs. I felt a hand, a real, solid hand, grip my shoulder. I spun with a gasp, but no one was there. I stood in silence, my heart hammering, trying not to retch. The sculptures stared at me again. The one closest now had its mouth twisted into what looked like a sneer. I reached out slowly and touched the cold stone cheek, feeling a film of moisture that made me snatch my hand back. It smelled like earth, like damp soil. I could hear those voices again. They seemed amused. Later that night, lying in bed, I replayed the events in my mind. I remembered a small journal I'd found in the main shop a few months ago. It was tucked inside an old writing desk, and its leather cover bore a strange mark. At the time, I couldn't decipher the language inside. It was all in some runic script. I hadn't thought much of it. Now I wondered if that journal had something to do with this corridor. The next morning, I dug it out of the drawer where I'd stashed it. I looked at the runes again, pressing the pages flat. With a magnifying glass, I spotted a recurring symbol that matched some on the grimoire's spines. It looked like an eye crossed by 2 slashes. My heart sank. I felt watched, even now in the daylight. That evening, I took the journal with me into the corridor. I don't know why. I guess I wanted answers to feel a little less helpless. The corridor felt colder this time. My breath puffed out before me in thin clouds. Dust motes swirled in the weak light of my flashlight. I approached the first sculpture, holding the journal up as if it were a shield. The whispering grew louder, but I couldn't pinpoint its source. It seemed to ooze from the walls themselves. I advanced slowly, each step punctuated by a soft creak of the floorboards beneath the rugs. The mirror gleamed at the far end, beckoning me closer. I managed to open one of the grimoires by prying its clasp loose with a letter opener. The pages were filled with symbols like those in the journal. My stomach tightened. I thought maybe these books described rituals or gateways. Was this corridor a passage to somewhere else? A dimension parallel to ours, where unseen beings fed on fear and confusion? The whispering voices seemed almost gleeful at my realization. They wanted me to understand what I was dealing with. I took another step toward the mirror, journal in one hand, flashlight in the other. My reflection came into view. It stood there, head slightly tilted, eyes darker than mine, lips parted as if it might speak. Behind me, I saw the sculptures shifting. They didn't move openly, just a subtle repositioning, like a frame jump in a poor quality film. Now all of them faced me, their mouths turned downward, grim and accusing. The silence pressed against my eardrums. I could hear my own heart, each beat making my vision flicker. I tried to speak, to say something, maybe demand who they were or what they wanted. My throat closed up. I coughed, and the sound echoed strangely. The reflection raised its hand a moment too late. I reached out, intending to touch the mirror, to see if it was solid. My fingertips never made it. The surface seemed to ripple slightly like old glass under a shifting light. I yanked my hand back, terror jolting through my veins. There was a presence in that mirror. No, behind it. I could feel it watching, feeding on the tension coiling in my muscles. The corridor felt narrower. I was afraid I might faint. My breathing grew shallow and erratic. If I passed out, what would happen? Would I wake up in that other dimension, surrounded by these intangible shapes? I backed away, stumbling over a rug, nearly dropping the flashlight. The whispering rose to a frantic pitch, and the sculptures' faces twisted again, their mouths stretching open in silent screams. I managed to turn and run, hunched low so my shoulders scraped the shelves, scattering a few grimoires to the ground. I didn't stop until I was through the door, up the stairs, and back in the main store. It took me a long time to catch my breath. My clothes stuck to my skin. I don't know how long I sat there, crouched behind a stack of dusty chairs, heart pounding, staring at the floorboards. Eventually, I locked the door to the basement and climbed up to my room. For days, I couldn't eat properly. Food turned to ash in my mouth. My reflection in my bedroom mirror looked off. My eyes seemed more sunken, and the skin around them darker. I was jumpy, sure someone or something had followed me back. The store upstairs felt emptier than usual, as if all the antiques were holding their breath. I tried calling a friend, but what would I say? There's something unholy in the basement? No one would believe me. Last night, in a half-sleep, I thought I saw something in the corner of my bedroom mirror, a vague outline of those sculptures, peering over my shoulder, shaking their heads in disapproval. When I flicked the light on, the shape vanished. But my heart was left hammering, the taste of old dust in my throat. Today I forced myself downstairs again just to check the basement door. It was still locked, but I heard the whispering through the wood, scratching at the edges of my mind. I know the corridor is still there, unchanged and yet ever shifting. I know that if I open that door again, I will see those sculptures glaring at me, their positions altered, their contempt palpable. The mirror will still be waiting at the far end, a thin veil between two worlds. And whatever lurks behind that surface, whatever watches through my reflection, will be hungry, eager to draw me back in. I don't know how much longer I can resist. Even now, as I stand upstairs, my reflection in the store's glass cabinet seems a half-second slow, the eyes darker than before. The corridor's pull is growing stronger, and my fear, ironically, only feeds it. I can taste the dust on my tongue. It feels gritty, like tiny shards of glass. And in that final glimpse, a flicker of my own silhouette in the glass, with those unseen shapes hovering behind my shoulders. I know nothing has ended. It's just waiting. I first heard the rustling around midnight. It was a soft, papery sound, like old documents being shuffled in a sealed library. Yet I was alone in that bedroom, lying awake, watching the faint outline of the wooden cabinet I'd inherited. I remember that night clearly because it was the first time I felt truly cornered in my own house. That cabinet, a tall and stern piece of furniture carved from some dark wood I couldn't name, stood near the foot of my bed. It had once belonged to my great-uncle, at least that's what the lawyer said. I'd never met the man. He died without any real heirs, and somehow, through a chain of dusty, forgotten relations, I ended up with his property. The cabinet came with the house, and I moved into it a week ago. The place still smelled of old varnish and stale carpets. I hadn't slept well since I arrived. The bedroom was small and cold, and there was a dampness to the air, something that stuck to my clothes and skin. Every night I'd wake up, heart thumping, aware of something off, something watching. The first couple of times, I blamed my nerves. The entire reason I chose to stay was financial. I had nowhere else to go after losing my apartment. It was either live in this inherited old house in the countryside or end up sleeping in my car. So I stayed, hoping to fix the place up and maybe sell it later. The cabinet's doors would creak sometimes even when I didn't touch them. I tried to ignore it. It had drawers filled with old photographs, portraits mostly. They were neatly stacked, each in a simple wooden frame. The people in them were from another era, men and women in dark old-fashioned suits, gazing straight ahead with no smiles, no children among them. Their eyes seemed cold and distant. The odd thing was I couldn't identify any of them. They weren't my relatives, or at least I didn't recognize their faces from the few family albums I knew. Maybe they were friends of my great-uncle or people he'd studied. He was a historian, I think, or something along those lines, but I never got a full explanation. The lawyer wasn't very talkative. On my second night, I woke again to that sound, the fluttering of pages or photos. Then came whispers. I couldn't make out words, just the soft, urgent hiss of many voices arguing in low tones. My heart pounded and my mouth went dry. I flicked on the lamp and stared at the cabinet. Its doors were shut. The drawer where I'd found those photographs was closed. Slowly I got up, feeling the floorboards chill through my socks. I pulled the cabinet doors open. Everything seemed as I had left it, except one photograph had moved to the front. It showed a stern-faced woman in a high-collared dress. Her eyes looked sharper than before, as if she disapproved of my intrusion. A nervous chuckle escaped me. I closed it and returned to bed, my mind racing. Maybe I'd misremembered the order. I tried to sleep, but the tension in my shoulders wouldn't relax. By the third or fourth night, I was losing patience. Each evening, I double-checked the position of every photograph. I counted them. There were 11. 10 men and 1 woman, all dressed in clothes that suggested they were from late 19th or early 20th century. None of them smiled. None of them broke eye contact with the camera. Their expressions held a kind of rigid defiance, as if they refused to be known or understood. That night, I awoke again around midnight to whispers. I shot out of bed, yanked open the cabinet drawer, and saw that the top photograph had changed. The face, a man with a thick mustache, looked slightly different. It was subtle, like he had shifted his posture. His eyes seemed narrower, more focused on me. My chest felt tight. I felt watched, scrutinized. After that, I tried something else. I picked up the top photograph and took it to the kitchen. I turned on all the lights, breathing fast, and decided to throw it into the trash bin. When I closed the lid, a weird relief washed over me, as if I'd broken a spell. I returned upstairs and checked the cabinet. Now the top photograph showed a different face, another man. It was the same old black and white style, the same rigid suit. I went back to bed determined not to listen to the whispers. The next morning I was sure I'd see an empty trash bin with that photograph still crumpled inside. But when I looked, the bin was empty except for last night's coffee grounds. Confused, I ran upstairs. The photograph I'd thrown away was back, neatly stacked with the others. I stood there, cold sweat gathering on my forehead. I touched the photos. The edges felt dry and brittle like old parchment. How had it gotten back? I spent the entire day trying to rationalize. Maybe I'd been sleepwalking, or I somehow got mixed up. The house was old. My nerves were shot. Determined, I took all the photographs out of the cabinet and placed them in a cardboard box. I drove to the edge of the property near a patch of overgrown trees and tossed the box in a small fire I built. I watched until the edges of the cardboard blackened and the frames inside began to smoke. The smell was horrible. Burned wood and musty paper. I coughed, stepping away, tears gathering in my eyes from the smoke. When it was done, just ash and charred scraps remained. Satisfied, I stomped back to the house. As I entered the bedroom, I felt suddenly ill. My stomach lurched at the sight. The cabinet drawer was slightly open, and inside, stacked neatly, were those 11 photographs. This time I noticed something worse. The faces had changed again. They were no longer distant strangers. Now I recognized the bone structure beneath the mustaches and beards, the shape of the eyes in the woman's thin face. They looked like older versions of me, distorted, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, each pair of eyes glaring as if I'd betrayed them. I doubled over, feeling my pulse hammer in my ears. This was impossible. The nights that followed were a blur of half-sleep and fearful awakenings. I heard the flipping of pages more distinctly now. I heard soft murmurs, words half-formed. Not ready. Inside. Must come closer. I lay sweating in my sheets, struggling to breathe quietly, as if any sound might give me away. My hands trembled whenever I reached for the cabinet. I tried locking it, barricading it with a chair, but it made no difference. By dawn, the photographs always rearranged themselves in a new order, each face more closely resembling mine. One had my eyes exactly, down to the tiny scar above my left eyebrow. I tried calling someone, but my cell service was weak out here. The phone line in the house was dead. I thought about leaving, but I had nowhere else to go. My savings were gone, and this was my last refuge. Besides, some sick curiosity held me here. I needed to understand what was happening. Maybe if I cracked open the back panel of the cabinet, I'd find a mechanism or old documents explaining these portraits. Maybe my great-uncle left notes. He'd been a recluse. Could he have been involved in some strange hobby? Late one afternoon, I mustered the courage to inspect the cabinet thoroughly. I found a small compartment hidden behind the main drawer. Inside it, there was a folded piece of parchment, the ink faded and the handwriting cramped. I could barely read it, but I caught words like inheritance, binding, and bloodline. It mentioned portraits that claim their own, and faces drawn closer as the cycle completes. My shoulders twitched at every sound while I read. A draft pressed against my neck. I stuffed the parchment back, heart racing. I had confirmation now that this was no accident. Something tied to my family. Something that wanted me. But how? That night I tried staying awake. Around midnight, I heard the first whisper. He's stubborn. Another voice, quieter. He must step inside willingly. My throat went dry. Did they think I'd climb into the cabinet? The idea was absurd. My heart hammered so loudly I worried they could hear it. The photographs were discussing me. There was no denying it now. My sweat turned cold at the realization. They had changed from strangers to versions of me. How much closer could these images get? Would they start moving while I watched? I crawled out of bed and crept toward the cabinet. The floorboards creaked. I pressed my ear against the wood. I felt a faint vibration inside, as if a dozen people were in a cramped room whispering urgently. I swallowed hard. The lamp's light flickered. My palms were slick with sweat. I pulled the drawer open just a crack. It resisted at first, then slid smoothly, revealing the photographs fanned out like a deck of cards. The top portrait now showed a perfect replica of my face, but older, hardened. The eyes in the photo glinted. I couldn't stand it. I slammed the drawer shut, nearly pinching my fingers. I tried again to get rid of them, this time by shredding the photographs with a knife. I worked furiously in the dim light, slicing and ripping at the brittle paper, ignoring the frantic murmurs that rose in pitch as I did so. For a second, I thought I saw the eyes in the photos dart in panic. When I finished, dozens of torn scraps littered the floor. I gathered them into a pillowcase and rushed downstairs, breathing heavily. I stuffed the scraps down the kitchen drain, poured boiling water over them, and then ran the tap until the sink overflowed. My hands shook. This had to work. But when I returned upstairs, a fresh set of photographs waited, arranged in a neat fan. They were no longer old strangers. They were me. Me in all of them. Different angles, different lighting, but always my face, stern and judgmental. I felt something snap inside me like a string pulled too tight. I backed away, stumbling onto the bed. I couldn't breathe. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window panes. The next few nights, I barely slept. I sat upright, watching the cabinet, ears straining to catch every whisper. They talked about me as if planning a trap. He must lean closer, said one. If we can catch his reflection in the glass of the frame, said another, and then they'd hush. Reflection. That word clanged in my mind. The frames were glass. If I looked into them too long, would I see something that pulled me in? One night, in a panicked rage, I tried yanking the entire cabinet out of the room. It was heavier than I expected, its wood dense and unyielding. I scraped it along the floor, panting, my muscles burning, and managed to get it halfway into the hallway. At that moment, the whispers turned frantic. The wood vibrated under my grip, and I stumbled back, scraping my knuckles. The cabinet shifted impossibly, returning to its original position when I blinked. My lungs constricted, as if the air itself hated me. Now, every midnight, I hear them. They know I'm afraid. They know I won't leave. And I know they're growing bolder. The last time I dared look directly into one photograph, my reflection in the glass covering seemed to smile back, even though I wasn't smiling. My stomach flipped, and I turned away, heart pounding. My appearance is changing. I see it in the bathroom mirror. My features look slightly sharper, older, as if I'm aging faster here. My fingertips tremble. My eyes have that same sternness I saw in the photographs. It's as if they're slowly drawing me into their world, no matter what I do. Tonight I'm lying in bed, eyes locked on that cabinet. I can't destroy it. I can't discard the photographs. They return, always. I'm stuck, trapped between these four walls, with no money to escape and no courage to face what lies within. The whispering is louder now, the pages turning faster, flipping through versions of me, deciding which shape to lure me into. My breathing is shallow and sweat coats my forehead. I know that as soon as I drift off, they will call to me again. I don't think they can kill me, not directly, but each night leaves me more hollow, more uncertain of what's real. When I wake at dawn, I touch my face and it feels unfamiliar. My skin tingles, as if the boundary between me and the photographs is thinning. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of movement in the glass when I pass by. I have started avoiding my own reflection. I have no proof to offer anyone else. No one would believe my story, but I know what's happening and I know I'm losing. Every midnight I sit in the darkness and listen to them plot. They're patient. They know I'm alone, and I'm sure as time passes they'll find a way. The cabinet stands there silent in daylight, but at night it's alive with their murmurs. I feel them waiting for the perfect moment to drag me inside. I can sense their eyes on me, feel their disapproval and hunger. I haven't escaped, and I don't know if I ever will. For now, all I can do is stare at that old wood, stiff and unyielding, and hear those voices rising in the quiet darkness. The photographs remain behind those doors, always watching, always waiting, and I'm certain they will never let me go. I'm gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ache, and the headlights of my rental car cut through a darkness so thick it feels alive. I've been on this back road for hours, the asphalt giving way to cracked gravel before my eyes, the GPS on my phone useless for the past 40 minutes. There's no signal, no streetlights, no familiar markers. Just my own strained breathing and the distant silhouette of old wooden fences that lean into the roadside as if trying to whisper something through the window. I'm here on business, a contract negotiation in a small factory town. I promised my family I'd be back by the weekend, and now it's well past midnight and I'm nowhere near the main highway. The longer I drive, the tighter my chest feels, like the night itself is pressing inward. A bead of sweat slides down my temple even though the air is cool. I should have stopped hours ago, taken a motel room in the last town I passed, but I wanted to shave time off my trip. That was a mistake. Every instinct tells me something's off. I slow down, straining to see beyond the reach of my headlights. Then I notice something ahead on the right. A cluster of old buildings, outlines of rooftops against the moonless sky. I pull over, engine rumbling softly. The village, it's too large to be a single farmhouse, seems completely abandoned. There are a few wooden houses, their windows boarded or empty, and a sagging inn sign that I can't quite read in the darkness. The silence outside is unnaturally heavy. I kill the engine. Now it's just me and my heartbeat, which sounds too loud. I step out, gravel crunching under my shoes, and call out, "Hello?" My own voice sounds hollow. No response. The ground is uneven. I push open a creaky gate and step into what might have been a town square. My flashlight beam trembles against old doors and chipped paint. The architecture looks outdated, like something from a century past. Dust and cobwebs everywhere. The smell is stale, like old wood and mold. My throat is dry. I try a door. It sticks. Another door opens inward with a groan, revealing a narrow hallway and a deserted parlor. I walk in, each step stirring dust motes that dance in the light. There's furniture inside. a table with a lace cloth, a sofa with torn upholstery, and on the wall opposite me, an oval mirror in a cracked frame. The surface is filthy, the glass darkened. I don't want to look at myself right now, not in this place. I flick the flashlight around. There's a sensation, a prickling at the back of my neck like I'm not alone. But there's no one here, no footprints, no recent disturbances. I can't stand the silence, so I say low, "Anyone here?" My voice is swallowed by the house. Then I hear it, a faint bell ringing somewhere outside. I freeze, mouth dry, and step back out onto the street. The bell rings again, followed by a second bell, a different tone, maybe higher pitched. It's coming from further down the row of houses. I follow the sound, heart pounding. Rounding a corner, I find a narrow alley and see a bell tied with a frayed rope around a tall wooden post. There's no electricity line, no wind to move it. Yet it sways gently. The sound it emits is soft, almost gentle, but each note sends a shiver up my spine. I notice another bell ahead, perched in a chimney like a bizarre weather vane. That one chimes in a different tone, as if answering the first. More bells appear the deeper I go, one dangling from a window latch, one beneath a porch roof, one mounted on a twisted iron hook behind closed shutters. Each rings in turn, a dissonant choir of metal whispers. I'm shaking slightly. My stomach knots. These bells are communicating. That's how it feels, like they're talking about me. I can't stand still. I need to understand. Maybe someone placed them here as a prank, or they once served as alarms. I tell myself to stay rational, but I can't ignore the fact that not a single person has shown their face. Not a single voice answers when I call out. Just these bells. I pick a larger house, a 2-story structure with a crooked sign that might have once read Draper's Shop, and slip inside, looking for anything that could explain what I'm seeing. The air inside is damp. I step over fallen shelves. On a counter I find an old ledger, pages brittle and yellowed. The entries are in cramped handwriting I can't fully decipher, but I see dates from decades ago. Everything stopped abruptly at some point. No farewell note, no mention of evacuation. Just a final scrawl and blank pages after that. Outside, the bells continue, some softly tinkling, others deep and resonant. I try to rest for a moment in a back room where a cot remains. I sit, my back against a damp wall, my legs trembling slightly. My throat is parched, so I sip from my water bottle. My hands are unsteady. I consider leaving, getting back in the car and driving off, but I'm not even sure I can find my way out of this maze of old roads. And something about these bells. They're pulling at me as if I need to understand their secret before I go. I force myself outside again, checking the time on my watch. Almost 2 a.m. The moon has risen, a thin sliver that casts weak light on the rooftops. The bells are quieter now, but they've scattered their voices throughout the village. I imagine them hung in every nook, behind locked doors, inside attics, in chimney flues, on lampposts with no lamps, in places only a careful eye would notice. I'm passing another house when a gust of wind. Where did it come from? Flicks dust into my eyes. I rub them, coughing, and as I blink away tears, I notice a tall standing mirror propped against a hallway wall, visible through a half-open door. This mirror is different from the one I saw earlier. It's larger, with a heavy wooden frame carved into the shape of twisting vines. Something about it draws me closer. I slip inside, shining my flashlight. The glass is covered in dust, but I can make out my silhouette. I step forward, raise a trembling hand, and wipe a small patch of dirt away with my sleeve. My own eyes stare back, wide and uncertain. At that moment, a single bell chimes, soft, warm, almost like a whisper. I spin around, the flashlight beam jerking over the empty room. No one there. But the bell calls again from somewhere above. I step into a side room, a kitchen maybe, and find a tiny bell hanging from a corner cabinet. It's so small I have no idea how I even noticed it, yet its voice is as clear as a gentle tap on a window pane. Suddenly, from outside, other bells answer, their tones overlapping, echoing down corridors and empty lanes, building into a strange conversation. My heart races. I step backward back toward the mirror. I catch my reflection again. For a fraction of a second, I swear I see someone standing behind me, just a shape with hollow eyes. When I turn, of course, no one's there. My skin crawls. It's late, and I'm exhausted. The bells keep calling, and I imagine them shaping my name out of their tones. I must be delirious, but I hear it. Ja, son, Ja, son, drawn out in half-tones. My breath comes in short gasps. I feel sweat trickling down my back. I need to get out, find my car, drive until the gas runs dry, anything to escape these chimes. I rush through the house, back onto the street. In my haste, I trip over a broken step and fall hard, scraping my palms. The pain grounds me for a second. Above, the sky seems closer, the silence between bell notes thicker. I start walking fast, then running. Around me, the bells ring faster, not in a frantic way, but in a pattern I can't decode. I dart behind a stable and nearly slam into another bell that's been tied to an old pitchfork stuck in the ground. I dash into what looks like a general store, hoping to find something, a tool, a cloth, anything to block my ears. Inside, I find a stack of dusty aprons. I grab one, wrap it around my head to muffle the sound. I'm breathing like I've run a marathon. Through the window, I see my reflection in the glass. The apron around my head looks ridiculous, but what catches my eye is something else. The reflection of the door behind me seems off, like the wood is warped. Within that distortion, I glimpse a pair of eyes that aren't mine, gazing through the mirror like pain. I spin around, and the door is just a door, no one there. A deep clang resounds from the village square. I uncover my ears and follow it, half in terror, half in desperate curiosity. At the center of this silent place, I find a tall pole with a large bell at the top. It's bigger than the others, heavy and old, maybe a church bell. I walk to it, legs shaky. Behind me, I sense movement, but when I turn, only darkness. The bells, large and small, start chiming again, more slowly this time, their voices layered into a low hum that seems to throb in my chest. My heart is pounding in sync. I can't escape the feeling that they're watching me, 1,000 invisible eyes peering from behind shutters and eaves. My own skin tingles as if insects crawl beneath it. I take a deep breath. My only option is to leave this place. I stumble back down the main street past the houses and the silent doorways, listening to the bells fade with each step. Finally, I reach my car. The relief is like cold water on a burn. I slide behind the wheel, hands trembling, and start the engine. The headlights flare on, illuminating a sign at the village's entrance I hadn't noticed before. In the reflection of the windshield, because now the windshield itself feels like a mirror, I catch a glimpse of something pale moving behind the houses. The bells give one last chime. My name. I'm sure of it now. And then go silent. I press the gas and pull away. The engine's roar breaks the hush. I do not look back. Once I'm on the open road again, I realize my hands are shaking uncontrollably. There's a tightness in my chest and a buzzing in my ears that no amount of fresh air can soothe. I keep checking the rearview mirror, convinced I'll see something following me. A figure, a floating bell, a twisted face in the darkness. But there's nothing. Only the memory of that eerie village, the chorus of bells, and the endless sensation of invisible eyes tracking my every move. By dawn, I find a main road and follow it to a diner. Inside, the neon lights and the smell of coffee feel almost alien after the night I've had. In the bathroom, I splash cold water on my face. Then I look up, meeting my own eyes in the mirror above the sink. For a second, I swear I hear a faint chime. My reflection flickers, or maybe I'm just tired. Yet I can't shake the feeling that what I saw in that village, what I left behind, is not finished with me. The memory of those bells hums just below my hearing, as if waiting for the right moment to ring my name again. I I remember the chill even now. It was late afternoon, and I had spent the entire day alone in that cramped basement, trying to turn the old storage space into a proper workshop. The overhead bulb flickered as I stripped away rotten panels and scraped off layers of peeling paint. Sweat trickled down my temples. My hands were coated in dust, my clothes heavy with the smell of damp earth and mold. It was in the corner beneath a protruding beam that I noticed a narrow crack running through the old concrete wall. At first, it looked harmless, just a slender fault line slicing through the rough surface. But when I ran my fingertips over it, I felt a sudden, sharp breeze, impossibly cold, like air escaping from a freezer. The hairs on my arms prickled. I leaned closer, pressing my ear against the concrete, and that's when I heard it. A voice, low and muffled, murmuring my name. I jerked back, heart pounding. My name, whispered in a slow, deliberate tone as if tasting each syllable. I turned off the sander, listened hard. Behind me, only the soft hum of the furnace and distant traffic through the narrow basement window. But from the crack, the voice came again, softer now as if retreating deeper into the wall. It said things only I would know. Details of my past, the year I moved here, the reason I never answered my brother's calls. My tongue felt thick. A bead of sweat rolled down my neck and vanished into my collar. I told myself it was a trick of acoustics, maybe old pipes carrying echoes from another part of the house. This place had always been strange. I had inherited it after my aunt passed, and though I never knew her well, she was distant, private. The basement was rumored to have once been a shelter. I had never bothered to dig too deep into old stories. But now, as I stood there, the voice hummed, murmured secrets, hinting at future events I had no way to confirm. It said a storm would hit next Thursday. It described a stranger who would knock on my door at midnight. It spoke with confidence, and sometimes it imitated my own voice so perfectly I could not distinguish who was talking inside my head. I needed a break. I backed away from that wall and climbed the narrow stairs 2 at a time. In the kitchen, I gulped down water, breathing heavily, forcing myself to think logically. Voices through a crack? Ridiculous. Maybe I was just exhausted. I decided I'd seal the crack. I'd patch it up with cement filler and forget about it. Simple solution. But when I returned downstairs, trowel and compound in hand, the atmosphere had changed. The basement felt tighter, the air stale, as if the walls had closed in. I knelt by the crack, shining my flashlight. The beam caught something odd. There was a slight sheen in the depths of that fissure, a subtle glimmer like polished metal or wet stone. I leaned closer but couldn't see more than a few inches inside. I pressed filler into the gap, pushing it firmly, determined to lock whatever was behind it away. The instant I did, the voice rose, louder, as if straining against the barrier. It mocked me now, using my voice, my inflections, repeating lines I used to mutter under my breath during hard times, hurling my own doubts back at me. My hand shook. A sudden gust of icy air blew from the crack and cut through my shirt, making me gasp. I stumbled back, leaving the job half done. That night I dreamed of faceless figures roaming my hallway upstairs, their heads smooth and blank like eggs. They hovered over my bed, reaching out with long, jointless fingers. I woke up sweating, my lungs tight. It was 3 a.m. I swore I could still feel their fingertips grazing my skin. I didn't go back to sleep. Instead, I paced the living room until dawn, thinking about the voice and the crack. The silence of the house pressed on me. I realized I hadn't truly relaxed since I started working in that basement. The next afternoon, I tried a different tactic. I dragged an old shelf and wedged it against the wall, covering the crack. Out of sight, out of mind. But as soon as I did, I felt a pressure at the base of my skull. The voice began again, muffled but insistent. It told me things I couldn't verify, but that made me shudder. Details about people I once knew, small humiliations from my past, choices I regretted. Then it spoke of events to come, my tools rusting, a burst pipe in the upstairs bathroom, a letter arriving with bad news. It rattled these predictions off in a steady, confident tone. I tried to ignore it, focusing on other tasks. I replaced a few loose steps on the staircase, tested the fuse box, cleaned old cobwebs. But the voice kept slipping into my consciousness, sometimes so subtle that I believed I was just thinking to myself. Other times it was louder, demanding, chanting my name in a mocking sing-song. I found an old leather-bound ledger tucked behind an abandoned crate. Inside, my aunt had scribbled notes about the house's previous owner, a relative I'd never heard of. She wrote about a strange door in the basement wall that was sealed years ago. The handwriting was shaky, the ink faded. There was a line that unsettled me. "It's not trying to kill, it's trying to become." I slammed the book shut, my heart racing. I didn't understand what it meant, but it couldn't be a coincidence. That evening, I tried calling a friend just to talk, but my phone kept dropping the call. I texted him to ask if he'd ever heard strange noises traveling through walls. No response. I looked at myself in the hallway mirror, noticing the dark circles under my eyes, the tension in my jaw. For a split second, I thought I saw my reflection's lips move even though I was perfectly still, and I nearly screamed. My nerves were on edge. I told myself it was just fatigue. Back downstairs, I approached the wall one more time, this time with a flashlight and a small hammer. If something physical was hidden behind that crack, I had to see it. I scraped away at the edges of the gap, widening it just enough to peek inside. My flashlight beam reflected off something smooth and shiny, a dull, warped gleam, like an old mirror with tarnished edges, set deep in the darkness of the cavity. I could see a hint of my own eye looking back, distorted and pale. My stomach turned. The voice whispered my name again, and the temperature dropped. It wanted contact, not violence. It wasn't threatening to harm me, yet it was invading my mind, lacing my thoughts with its presence. My breathing went shallow. I hammered a small wooden board over the crack. The voice wailed. The sound vibrated in my skull, not in the air. My fingers went numb, and I coughed as if choking on icy air. I had to make a choice. Leave this house or confront whatever was behind that wall. But this was my home now. I had put months of effort into making it livable, and I had nowhere else to go. Could I abandon it all because of a whisper? I decided to seal the crack completely. I gathered tools, heavy cement, metal mesh, paint. I worked through the night, sweat soaking my shirt, heart hammering. Each time I pressed the trowel against the opening, the voice hissed in protest. It recited my failures, repeated the worst things I'd said to people I loved. My knees shook, but I kept going, layer after layer, until the crack was nothing more than a faint line under fresh paint. By morning, I was exhausted. The basement felt slightly warmer, quieter. I collapsed on an old stool, head in my hands, waiting for the voice to rage again. But it had grown distant, receding to a faint murmur that I could almost believe was just my memory playing tricks. For a week, things seemed calm. I avoided the basement, though I could sense a lingering chill beneath my floorboards. I slept fitfully, still haunted by dream figures without faces, but now they seemed further away, less distinct. I began to relax, telling myself it was over. Then yesterday I saw something that made my skin crawl. I was down in the basement again, checking for any signs of moisture. The wall looked normal, no cracks. But when I glanced at a shiny patch of the floor where a puddle had dried, I noticed my reflection in that slight sheen. My reflection's lips parted. I had not opened mine. It looked at me, head tilting, and I could almost make out the faint shape of a face I didn't recognize lurking just behind my reflection's shoulder, featureless but watchful. The temperature plummeted. My heart raced. I backed away, my feet scraping the concrete, unable to look away until I stumbled and caught myself against the railing. The reflection's lips moved silently, forming my name once more. I fled up the stairs, heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Now I write this, hands shaking, door locked behind me. I feel the pressure in my head again, a distant hum. I run my tongue over my dry lips and taste dust. The mirror in the bathroom upstairs is covered with a towel. I can't bear to see my own face. Every reflective surface seems to hold a glimpse of something lurking, waiting, whispering. I feel its presence inside me, not fully formed, but growing more comfortable in the corners of my mind. I've sealed the physical crack, but I can't shake the feeling that I've only given it a new home. My thoughts. When I stand in front of the kitchen window at dusk, I sometimes catch my reflection grinning at me out of sync, or mouthing words I can't quite hear. And then, in the silence, there's a soft murmur, just beneath the threshold of sound, calling my name, reminding me that none of this is truly over. I can't say how long I've been stumbling around in this damned mist, but I know it's longer than it should be. My throat is raw from breathing the cold, damp air, and my skin feels clammy inside my jacket. When I first stepped off the trail, just a few hours ago, I think, the forest seemed quiet enough. I'd come out here for a weekend hike to clear my head after months stuck in my apartment. The plan was simple: reach the summit, enjoy the view, and head back before sunset. But now nothing looks familiar anymore. Even the shape of the trees is distorted by the milky haze. The white mist is everywhere, thicker than I've ever seen. It drifts and swirls without the slightest breeze to move it. And that smell, it's faint, almost like stale air trapped in an old trunk, but it makes my nostrils flare and my stomach knot. My eyes burn, and if I stand still too long, I start to feel dizzy. I swear the ground tilts under me sometimes, as if I'm walking on a spinning platform. I try to focus on a tree trunk a few steps ahead. As I move toward it, my boots sink into damp leaves and soft soil. My heart is racing, and there's this persistent heaviness in my chest. I can't shake the sense that something is wrong. Very wrong. I take out my compass again. The needle spins aimlessly, refusing to settle. My GPS, which was fully charged when I left my cabin by the foothills, won't even turn on now. It's like everything electronic is dead or confused in here. I catch myself shaking the device and cursing under my breath. It's pointless. I reach that tree trunk and lean against it, trying to catch my breath and calm down. Through the whiteness, I spot something else. A faint outline of another figure, just a dozen feet away. I stiffen, my heart pounding. I don't call out. Instead, I watch silently. The shape is tall and thin, like a person hunched forward. Its edges shimmer and break apart as the mist swallows it. Then it's gone. I blink rapidly, unsure if it was ever really there. I've seen it a few times now, these human-like contours forming and dissolving, as if the fog is painting and erasing people at random. I've never seen one long enough to confirm it's real. They always vanish the moment I try to make sense of them. My legs tremble. I force myself onward, hoping maybe the mist thins out further ahead. Instead, after pushing through tangled undergrowth, I stumble upon a small cabin. It's old and weathered, with gray planks and a sagging roof. I don't remember seeing it on any map, but right now it's the closest thing to shelter I've found. I push the creaky door open. Inside, the light is dim, filtered through grimy windows, and the silence is heavy. My boots scrape the wooden floorboards, stirring a smell of mold and rotten fabric. A chair lies on its side, and a table is pushed into a corner. I lean against the wall, breathing hard, trying to steady my nerves. My fingertips are numb. The presence of the cabin gives me a strange comfort, but it's also unsettling. It shouldn't be here. I set down my backpack, check my water supply. I have enough to last the night if I'm careful. I wipe sweat from my forehead and try to think. I recall leaving my small rental cabin at dawn, excited about the hike. I was sick of my apartment in the city, sick of the noise, so I took some time off work to find peace in the mountains. Now I'm regretting it. I notice a mirror nailed to the far wall. Its frame is chipped and the reflective surface is dusty. As I approach, I can't see my face clearly, just my silhouette against that murky glass. I raise a shaky hand and wipe the surface with my sleeve. The reflection sharpens slightly, and for a moment I think I see something behind me. A pale form drifting outside the window. I whirl around. Nothing's there. When I look back at the mirror, all I see is my own frightened expression and the dim cabin interior. On a small shelf, I find a handful of papers, faded and curled. They look like journal entries or survey notes. I recognize a few words: fog, impossible readings, compass spinning, voices at night. My heart sinks. Someone else has been trapped here. I flip through them quickly. The handwriting grows frantic, letters slanting, ink smudged. No date, no signature. Just scattered complaints and observations. No instructions on how they escaped, if they escaped at all. I hear something outside, a soft, low hum. It might be the wind, but there's no rustle of leaves, no sway of branches. It sounds more like distant voices singing a droning chant. I press my ear to the door. The sound fades, then swells again, beckoning me. My skin prickles. They want me back out there in the mist. I swallow hard, remember the strange shapes I saw. They haven't attacked me. They haven't tried to kill me. They just linger, out of reach, always shifting. It's as if they want me to wander until I lose myself completely. I sit down on the floor, knees drawn up, trying to control my breathing. I need a plan. If I can't rely on my compass or GPS, maybe I can follow the slope of the land downhill. That should eventually lead me back to the foothills, where my rental cabin sits and my car waits. I still have energy bars, a flashlight, a whistle. The flashlight works, at least for now. I click it on, shining it around the cabin. The beam falls on the mirror again. I swear, for a split second, I see movement inside it, like the reflection of someone passing behind me. I leap to my feet and swing the flashlight around. Nothing but old wood and broken furniture. I can't stay here. The cabin walls feel too close. My breath is shallow. I grab my things and step outside again. The mist greets me with a clammy embrace. The humming voices are quieter now, distant but insistent. I pick a direction, aiming downhill, and start moving carefully. With each step, the undergrowth clutches my ankles. I slide on wet leaves, catch myself on a branch. My heart is thudding in my ears. A shape emerges to my right, tall, featureless, and impossibly still. I shine my flashlight on it. It evaporates. I stagger back, nearly dropping the light. The chanting grows louder, impossible to pinpoint. I press on. Minutes stretch. The white vapor clings to my eyelashes. I feel nauseous, dizzy. My vision blurs. I'm sweating, then shivering, then sweating again. My ears pop, and I shake my head to clear it. Still, I move forward, step by step. I stumble on a fallen log and decide to rest. I can't keep going blindly. My muscles ache. I tilt my head up, but there's no sky, just endless whiteness. Did I take a wrong turn again? The chanting fades, replaced by silence. I feel like I'm sinking into a vast emptiness. I bite my lip, taste coppery blood. The pain helps me focus. I rummage in my backpack, find my whistle. I blow it twice, sharp and loud. The sound is swallowed by the fog, returning as a weak echo. No answer. I close my eyes, try to recall the map. The cabin where I started this morning was 2 hours from the main road. The trail was marked clearly. If I head southeast, I should eventually find the river. But which way is southeast now? My compass is useless. I check it again, still spinning. I try the GPS once more. Dead. My phone, signal gone. I'm trapped in a bubble of confusion. Suddenly I hear steps behind me. I jump up, my heart hammering. I swing the flashlight, illuminating nothing but swirling mist. Still, I feel it. Something old, ancient maybe, passing nearby. The hair on my neck stands up. I think of the journal pages in the cabin. They mentioned voices and impossible readings. Maybe this fog is not natural. Maybe it's something that's been here for centuries, luring travelers off the path and keeping them lost. It doesn't kill. It just keeps you wandering in panic, forever. I won't let that happen. I grit my teeth, force myself forward. The ground slopes downward slightly, so I follow that incline. I whisper to myself, "Keep moving, keep moving." My voice cracks. I focus on each footstep. Every now and then I see those outlines, human-like figures that appear and vanish in my peripheral vision. I refuse to look at them directly anymore. They want me to panic, to run in circles. My flashlight begins to dim. My throat tightens. I pick up my pace. The mist grows thicker, pressing on my eyes. Then I remember the mirror in the cabin and the vague reflection of a figure standing behind me. Was that thing inside too? Is it inside me now? I feel a sharp pain in my chest and gasp, stumbling forward. The chanting returns, louder, like a distant choir calling my name. They want me to listen, to turn around and follow them back into the heart of the fog. My teeth chatter. I shout, "Leave me alone." My voice sounds ridiculous, muffled. The chanting doesn't stop. Instead, it fractures into whispers that seem to come from inside my own head. I swat at the air, nearly drop my bag, and force myself onward. My palms are clammy. I'm trying to ignore the growing certainty that I've been walking in circles, that the cabin might be behind me now, or in front of me, or gone altogether. Time blurs. Eventually, I see something that makes my heart leap. A faint break in the mist. It's subtle, but the whiteness seems thinner ahead. I lurch toward it, pushing through a thicket of branches that scratch at my coat. My breathing is ragged. Step after step, the air clears slightly. I stumble onto a familiar slope. Yes, I've seen this kind of rock formation before. This must be near where I started. I'm not sure, but I cling to that hope. I check my compass again. The needle still spins, but a bit slower now. I try my phone. A faint beep, but no signal. At least it's not entirely dead. I exhale, struggling to calm the trembling in my limbs. The chanting fades behind me, but it's still there, waiting. I can feel it on the back of my neck. They haven't gone. They're just letting me think I'm safe. I walk another 10 minutes and recognize a fallen pine I passed early in the morning. Relief surges through me. I'm almost out. My head still pounds, but the dizziness lessens. I hurry toward what I believe to be the correct direction. Behind me, I think I hear my whistle's echo, like someone else blowing it. I refuse to turn around. When I finally break free of the thickest part of the mist, I collapse near a large boulder. There's more color in the world now, the green of moss, the brown of earth. The oppressive whiteness is retreating, though tendrils still linger at the edge of my vision. I want to laugh and cry at the same time. My body aches, and I'm soaked in sweat. I look at the screen of my phone again. The battery icon returns, flickering. The compass on my watch wobbles, but tries to point somewhere. I'm not safe yet, but I'm closer. I get up and take a few steps, then glance at the reflective glass of my watch. Inside that tiny reflection, I see my face, pale and haunted. And behind it, just at the corner, something shifts, a faint outline drifting in the trees. My heart nearly stops. I jerk my arm away, breathing hard. The shape in the watch's reflection is gone. But now I know it's still with me. Even out here, away from the worst of that mist, the presence clings on, lurking in reflections. I can't be sure it's not following me back to my rented cabin, back into my life. As I limp downhill, I keep checking over my shoulder, waiting for those whispers to start again. I have escaped the thick of it for now, but I feel it inside my bones, like a stain that won't wash out. I know I'll never trust my compass the same way again. I know I'll always keep an eye on my reflections, looking for a flicker of white behind me. The mist doesn't need to kill. It just needs me to remember that it's still there, waiting. And I do. I will never forget. I remember the first time I heard it. A faint but distinct set of footsteps pacing outside my door. It must have been well after midnight, and I just sunk into the old armchair near the window, trying to settle my restless legs. The hotel's top floor was supposed to be quiet, reserved for guests seeking privacy, yet I could feel every creak of the floorboards in the corridor beyond my room. I pressed my ear to the heavy wooden door and listened. The steps came evenly, heel to toe, pausing briefly, then turning around. No voices, no whispers, just the repetitive shuffle. I peered through the door's peephole. The hallway's light, dim and yellowish, revealed nothing but the patterned carpet and a long row of closed doors. No figure. Yet I kept hearing the steps, always at the same measured pace, as if someone were retracing old routes. My heart tightened. My throat felt dry. I'd come to this historic hotel to get some peace, an odd choice, I admit, since I'd read rumors about strange occurrences here. But I wanted isolation, not comfort. I needed a place to clear my mind after a series of bad decisions. Now instead, I got footsteps and silence. By the time morning light seeped in through the heavy brocade curtains, I was still awake, jittery and irritated. I decided I would ignore it all. Maybe it was just old pipes or floorboards expanding with changes in temperature. Yes, that must be it. The staff downstairs had given me a knowing smile when I checked in, a slight tilt of the head as if to say, "You're staying up there? Good luck." But I had waved it off. I didn't believe in ghosts. I didn't believe in curses. I just needed a few days away from my life back home, from my failures and regrets. Late afternoon, I wandered the corridors, hoping to find some rational explanation. The top floor was lined with antique mirrors in ornate frames and dusty paintings of unknown people who had probably been guests or owners decades ago. I stopped in front of a large rectangular mirror next to the staircase. The glass was uneven, slightly warped, giving my reflection a slender, elongated look. The hall's lamps flickered, and for a moment I could have sworn I saw another shape beside me, a dark smudge in the reflection. I blinked, and it disappeared. Just my nerves. I was tired. I found a small lounge area down the hall, half forgotten, with faded armchairs and a low table scattered with old brochures of the hotel's past events. There was an old photograph, black and white, slightly curled at the edges, showing the very corridor I stood in. Some previous era's guests posed stiffly against the walls. I examined the photo. The wallpaper pattern was the same. The mirrors were the same. In the photo's background, a tall figure lingered by a door, head tilted forward as if listening. No name, no caption. Just a ghostly presence recorded on film. I replaced the photo and rubbed my arms, suddenly cold. Night fell again, and I tried to rest. I propped a chair under the doorknob to feel safer. The footsteps began around the same time, a slow, rhythmic pattern. I lay in bed, covers pulled to my chest, focusing on my breath. I told myself, I'm imagining things. But the door handle rattled as if someone tried to enter. My heart thumped. I leaned forward, sweat beading on my forehead. The knob twisted, but the chair held. Then silence. No knock. No explanation. I dared to approach the door. The second I looked through the peephole, the corridor was still. No one. That was when I felt a movement behind me. I spun around. The curtain by the window swayed, though the air was dead still. The old radiator hissed softly, but there was no breeze. I could smell something faint, like old cologne maybe, or dust unsettled from a hidden nook. I backed away, nearly stumbling over my own suitcase. My gut twisted. Something was here. I tried to sleep again. Hours passed. Then, just before dawn, I heard it inside the room. Footsteps, on the carpet. Quiet but undeniable. I sat up too fast and got dizzy. My palms were clammy, my chest tight. I reached for the lamp and switched it on. Nothing visible. Yet I felt something brush past me, a presence that made the fine hairs on my arms stand on end. I strained my ears and caught a soft scuff near the dresser. When I dared to look at the wall, I saw a long, thin shadow stretching upward, swaying slightly. No source, no figure to cast it. My eyes watered. I couldn't scream, it felt pointless. I had come here alone. Who would help me? In the morning, the footsteps ceased. I hurried downstairs and confronted the receptionist. Is there anyone else on my floor? He gave me a tight smile as if embarrassed. No, sir. You have the entire floor to yourself. I demanded he tell me if someone had keys. He shrugged, muttering something about the age of the building, how some guests had mentioned odd noises, but no harm had ever come to anyone. I could see it in his eyes. He didn't want trouble. He suggested I move to a lower floor, yet I refused. For some reason, I felt compelled to stay. It was as if something in that corridor wanted me trapped, and a stubborn part of me wanted to understand why. That afternoon, I examined the door closely. I even took the chair away and opened it abruptly at the time I expected the footsteps, hoping to catch someone off guard. Nothing. I tried to record the sound with my phone, but all I picked up was a distant creaking. I paced the corridor, stopping at the mirrors, running my fingers along their frames. Dust settled under my nails. At one point, I pressed my face close to the large mirror. I looked exhausted, pale, eyes bloodshot, hair damp with sweat. As I stared, something flickered at the edge of my vision. I tried to keep calm. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shape drift behind me. I spun around. The corridor was empty, but the mirror's surface trembled slightly, or so it seemed. By the third night, my nerves were shot. The pacing outside resumed. The handle turned on its own, gently at first, then more insistently. I piled up my luggage against the door. I could hear soft scraping against the wood. Then a whisper, barely audible. I pressed my ear to the door and heard something like breathing, raspy and slow. I retreated to the bed, heart pounding so hard I tasted metal in my mouth. The shadows in the room grew darker, like ink spreading over the walls. The curtains danced again. I tried to pretend it wasn't happening, but my body shook uncontrollably. Then came the worst part. I felt the footsteps inside again, circling my bed. I reached for the lamp, but the switch wouldn't respond. I tried to stand, but something heavy pressed on my shoulders as if warning me. The air smelled stale, like an abandoned attic. I gritted my teeth and managed to light the small flashlight on my phone. The beam caught only empty space. Yet on the far wall, that impossible shadow stretched tall, tilting its head just as in the old photograph. I pleaded aloud, "Leave me alone." My voice cracked, my throat burned. There was no answer. Still, I sensed a kind of patience in the silence, as if it were waiting for me to submit. My mind raced. Could I run out of here? Could I just abandon the room, the hotel entirely? But as I approached the doorknob rattled violently, and I heard that same rhythmic pacing in the corridor. It was as if the presence wanted to keep me from leaving, locking me in a loop of fear. Determined, I grabbed a sheet and flung it over the largest mirror in the corridor, hoping that would help. But as I stepped back inside, the footsteps followed, almost amused. I dragged a chair under the knob again, breathing hard. I kept wiping sweat from my face, my stomach knotted. The more I resisted, the stronger its hold seemed to grow. When I leaned against the door, I realized I was trembling so badly I could barely stand. At some point near dawn, delirious from lack of sleep, I tore open the dresser drawers. Inside, I found old stationery, a letterhead from the hotel's early days. There, written in neat cursive, was a guest's note. "I cannot leave this room. He walks the halls every night, and when I look through the mirror, I see him behind me." My skin crawled, so I wasn't the first. This had happened before, decades ago. I realized this presence thrived on being noticed. It didn't want to kill me. It wanted to keep me trapped in terror, each night the same, each dawn a retreat. I tried to steady my breath. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stood before the covered mirror in the corridor, yanked off the sheet and stared directly at the glass. For a long, nauseating moment, I saw a tall silhouette standing behind me, leaning forward, fingers hovering near my shoulder, its shape distorted by old glass. I blinked and the corridor was empty again. But I knew it was there, waiting, always waiting. I stumbled back into my room, slammed the door, and braced myself against it. Morning light seeped in, and for a moment I could breathe. My body felt drained, as if I'd been running marathons all night. I decided to leave this place no matter what. I packed my things quickly, ignoring the tingle at the back of my neck. But as I reached the threshold, the doorknob seemed to jam. I pulled harder, the wood groaning. Finally, it opened. The corridor was still. I nearly ran to the elevator, dragging my suitcase. In the old mirror beside the elevator doors, I caught my own reflection. I looked haggard, a man changed by one sleepless terror after another. But as I leaned forward, trying to adjust my collar and steady my nerves, I noticed something. My reflection's eyes seemed darker, its posture slightly different. And behind that reflected version of myself was a faint, familiar outline. The tall figure. It hovered there, just at the edge of sight, as if it had climbed inside me, or lingered so close that I'd never truly be alone again. With a ding, the elevator arrived. Before I stepped in, I glanced back at that mirror. My breath caught. My reflection smiled faintly, an expression I swear I did not make. My stomach twisted and I stepped back, nearly toppling my suitcase. The corridor fell silent, but in my ears I still heard the pacing footsteps, the steady tread of something that refused to let me go. I left the building soon after, but even as I walked away, I could feel an odd tension in my muscles, a lingering stiffness in my shoulders. Later, I checked my reflection in a store window and thought I caught a shadow at my back, impossibly tall. I looked again, and it was gone. Yet now, I can never be sure. Maybe I carried that presence with me, locked inside my own fearful heart. Maybe I will always feel that gentle pressure on the doorknob, that quiet pacing in the hall, and see that distorted shape hovering in every reflection, waiting to be noticed again. I remember the first time I saw it move. Just a slight shift, a subtle bend at the waist. It was around Tres d'Amanhun, and the air tasted stale, as if it had been locked inside the old garden walls for centuries. I had stumbled out of my cramped guest room, drawn by a strange scratching noise outside. I'd been living here for 2 months, tending the neglected rose bushes and trimming back the ivy that clawed at the brickwork of the house. It was a temporary job. A friend, or maybe just an acquaintance who owed me, offered me the caretaker's position while I tried to sort my life out. I still don't know why I accepted. On that particular night, I crept barefoot across the cold patio stones, my heart pounding in my ears. Everything looked distorted under the moonlight, and I swore the shadows moved along the edges of my vision. The statue had always stood at the end of the garden, facing the vine-choked trellis. I never gave it too much attention except to note that it was featureless, just a smooth oval where a face should have been, like someone had started carving it and then given up halfway. But now, as I stood there shivering, I saw something different. The stone surface no longer looked flat. It seemed to bear faint contours, like half-formed expressions surfacing beneath the worn surface. I took a hesitant step closer, rubbing my arms, trying to chase away a creeping chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. I leaned in, straining to see, and that's when I realized it had a face. Or rather, it was struggling to have one. In the weak moonlight, I glimpsed indistinct features: an old man's furrowed brow, a pair of hollow cheeks, then the suggestion of a curled lip as if sneering at me. I blinked and the features shifted, turning into the strained, tearful visage of a woman. My stomach clenched and I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a gardening shovel left leaning against the shed. The statue didn't move while I watched it directly, yet I had this overpowering sensation that when I looked away it might lean forward again. I tried to steady my breathing, pressing a hand to my chest. The night was dead silent except for my own ragged inhalations and the faint rustle of leaves. The next morning I convinced myself I'd been half dreaming. I told myself I just needed rest. Tending the garden, cleaning dead leaves, and clearing the overgrown paths had drained me. I was exhausted. My life before this had been chaotic, moving from job to job, trying to outrun my own failures. Maybe I was just on edge. As the day wore on, I moved gingerly past the statue, focusing on my chores. I pruned roses, scooped up fallen petals, and tried not to look at it, but I couldn't help myself. Every time I glanced over my shoulder, I noticed something new on its face. A cluster of thin wrinkles on its forehead, a faint scar running along what could have been a cheek. It was as if an invisible sculptor worked at it overnight, refining details while I slept. By midday, I noticed the statue's posture seemed different. It no longer faced the trellis perfectly. It seemed angled, just a bit, to watch the door I used to re-enter the house. I shook my head, sweat trickling down my temples. I told myself I was imagining it. But later, as the sun dipped and the light turned gold, I found myself lingering by the window in the living room, staring out. I'd found a small hand mirror in a drawer earlier that week, just an old tarnished thing someone left behind. Using it, I angled my line of sight from inside the house, checking if the statue would move when I wasn't looking directly. I held my breath, waited. Nothing happened, but something about its stance felt heavier, as if it leaned forward just a fraction more, ready to whisper secrets into my ear. That night I slept poorly, twisting in sweat-damp sheets. The room smelled musty, a blend of old wood and dusty fabric. I woke several times, sure I'd heard footsteps on the patio stones. Once I thought I heard a low scraping sound, like a hand brushing against brick. When I finally got up, heart thudding, I took the flashlight and peeked outside. Everything was still. But I noticed new details the next morning. The statue's face had changed again, now a gaunt expression, lips parted as if silently calling me. A series of tiny marks ran along its jawline, strange runes or scars. I couldn't decipher their meaning, but they made me uneasy. The feeling of being watched was now constant. I tried to rationalize what was happening. Could the statue be weathering in odd patterns, maybe cracks forming that resembled facial features? I considered covering it with a tarp, but I hesitated. Something about it felt dangerous. Like if I provoked it, it might do more than just watch. A few nights later, I decided to push back. I waited until dusk when the sky turned bruise purple and went outside with a large linen sheet. My legs shook a bit as I approached, and my palms felt clammy around the folded fabric. The statue's face, or faces because it never seemed settled, was caught halfway between a scowl and a sneer. I stepped closer, my breath coming in shallow bursts. Its body language seemed off. It was definitely leaning forward now, tilted toward me as if eager to communicate something dreadful. My heart hammered. I glanced around. No one else was here. I was alone with it, the house behind me dark and silent. Slowly, I lifted the sheet and tried to drape it over the statue's head and shoulders. My fingers brushed the stone's surface and it felt oddly warm, like it had been sitting in the sun, even though the air was cool. For a second, I thought I felt it shift beneath my hand. I gasped, pulling away, and the sheet slipped off. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a rake. My skin prickled all over. I tried again, but I couldn't make myself touch it. Something in me screamed that making direct contact was a mistake. That night was a storm of half-formed nightmares. I woke up more than once, heart pounding, convinced I heard whispering through the window. But the wind had picked up outside, and branches scraped the walls like fingernails. I clutched the small mirror I'd found, using its surface to check the hallway behind me whenever I went for a glass of water or stood at the bathroom door. I kept expecting to see the statue just outside the window, pressing its cracked face against the glass. In the morning, a subtle change had occurred. The statue now bore distinct grooves that looked like veins bulging along its neck. Its eyes, previously mere hollows, had shallow indentations suggesting pupils. I felt sick. My stomach twisted, and the back of my neck felt hot. I couldn't eat. Just looking at it made me break out in a cold sweat. It knew something about me. I could feel that. As if it had been studying my every move, cataloging my fears, waiting for some perfect moment to show me something I wasn't ready to see. I spent hours locked inside the house that day, flipping through dusty papers I found in a storage chest by the stairs. I don't know what I was looking for. Some clue, some explanation. Most documents were old receipts, letters with faded ink, and an inventory of garden supplies from decades past. One letter mentioned the statue in passing. The gardener insists the old figure predates the house itself, it read. He believes it changes, but I have not witnessed this myself. I slammed the drawer shut. My pulse quickened, so I wasn't the first. That alone made my throat tighten. If others had noticed, why did they leave no solution? As night fell again, I felt cornered. My heart kept thudding in my chest like a trapped animal, and every sound, floorboards creaking, distant branches snapping, made me flinch. I tried to think rationally. I needed to do something. Leaving was an option, but I had nowhere else to go, not yet. I decided to confront the statue directly. Maybe break it? But that thought brought a surge of panic. What if that unleashed something worse? Armed with my flashlight and the handheld mirror tucked into my pocket, I stepped outside. It was quiet, but a charged kind of quiet, like the air before lightning strikes. I approached slowly. The statue now looked unmistakably human, yet its face was still shifting. Old man, weary woman, a grim mask of pain and rage. It leaned so far forward that I half expected it to topple. My legs trembled and I felt sweat trickle down my spine. I raised the flashlight beam to its face. For a heartbeat, it stayed motionless. Then I noticed a subtle twitch, a tiny movement as though it were about to speak. My throat tightened. I lifted the mirror, angling it so I could see the statue's face without meeting its gaze directly. The reflection was distorted, but I saw it in the silvered glass. The stone lips parted. I heard no words, just a dry rasp, like stone on stone. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like lead. Instead, I took a step back. The statue seemed to follow the movement, bending a fraction more. I couldn't stand it. I grabbed the linen sheet I'd left crumpled near the trellis and flung it at the statue. I managed to cover its head this time. The rough outline of a face pressed against the fabric from beneath, features bulging outward as if trying to escape. I staggered back, dizzy. The night air felt too thick to breathe. I tasted bile on my tongue. Then, without warning, the sheet slid off on its own, drifting to the ground. The statue was bare again, featureless for just a moment, as if mocking me. Then it slowly formed a new face, an expression I recognized, my own. I swallowed hard, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. It was mimicking me, my own fear and pain reflected in that cold stone. I couldn't stay. I bolted inside, locking the door. My chest heaved as I collapsed against the wall, sweat soaking my shirt. In the hallway mirror, yes, there was a mirror inside, a small one hung near the coat rack. I thought I caught a movement behind me. I spun around, but nothing was there. Still, my reflection looked different. My eyes seemed darker, hollowed out. The skin under my left eye looked bruised. My own face, already tired, now carried an unsettling resemblance to the statue's shifting features. As dawn approached, I still couldn't sleep. The windows rattled softly. I peered outside, but the statue was just a silhouette against the pale sky. I couldn't tell if it had moved again. My stomach twisted as I considered the future. I would leave soon, maybe tomorrow, I told myself. This job wasn't worth my sanity. But just as I turned away, I caught a glimpse in the mirror on the hallway wall. The reflection showed the statue standing closer to the house, impossibly close, right beneath the window. I swore it was inches from the glass, leaning in. My heart jolted, and when I looked outside directly, it was back at its original spot. The reflection, though, lingered in my mind, seared there like a brand. Now, even as I try to calm myself, I know I won't rest. My eyes play tricks on me. My skin feels tight and feverish. When I glance quickly into any reflective surface, window panes, the steel doorknob, the small hand mirror, I think I see its face behind mine, carved with impossible detail. The scars, the marks, the shifting eyes. It's learned something about me, and it's not done. The danger hasn't passed. Every reflection, every glance over my shoulder tells me the same thing. It's waiting, and it's closer than ever. I'm not sure when I realized how quiet the house had become. Maybe it was during one of those flickers of light when the overhead lamp buzzed and dimmed, leaving me blinking in semi-darkness. I stood in my grandfather's old study, one foot half wrapped in the edge of the worn rug, holding the pocket watch he'd left me. The watch felt heavy in my hand, colder than it should have been, its chain dangling lifelessly. I'd tried 3 times now to adjust it, but it wouldn't budge from exactly 3 o'clock. The hands stood rigid, mocking me with their stubborn stillness. I swallowed hard. The air tasted stale, as though the windows hadn't been opened in decades. The dark wooden walls seemed to press inward, the silence heavy and claustrophobic. I remember the day I moved into this creaking old place, my grandfather's house. I inherited it after he passed, and though I'd always found it eerie, I never expected something like this. But now, with the watch clasped in my palm, each breath I drew felt more difficult than the last. I tried to ignore the goosebumps that crept over my arms and neck. I turned the watch over. Its ornate casing bore strange geometric patterns etched into the metal, circles interlocked with triangles and lines I couldn't decipher. I pressed the small button at the top, expecting the cover to pop open smoothly. It stuck for a moment, then gave way with a click. Inside, the watch's face shone back at me. It was oddly reflective, like a tiny silver mirror set behind the motionless hands. Just seeing my distorted reflection made my stomach twist. Then the temperature dropped further. My breath misted in front of my face. I heard a whisper, faint, almost impossible to catch. It slid beneath my hearing like a blade beneath skin. My heart fluttered. I glanced around the study, the old oak desk, stacks of yellowed papers, the musty chair. Nothing and no one else. Just that voice, a half-syllable of something dark and distant, lingering in the corners. I stepped back into the hallway, fumbling for the light switch. The corridor lamp flickered pathetically, casting jittery shadows along the peeling wallpaper. My pulse hammered in my ears. I touched my forehead with my free hand, felt the cool sweat forming there. Something was deeply wrong, and I knew it. But what could I do? This was my home now. I had nowhere else to stay, not tonight at least. And if I left, where would I go at this hour? I closed the watch with a snap, hoping it would help. The temperature rose a degree, maybe just in my mind. I turned toward the living room, intending to sit down, collect my thoughts, maybe make some tea. As I stepped through the doorway, I stumbled. My vision blurred, and suddenly I was standing in front of the cold, dark TV set. But how had I crossed the room so quickly? I blinked, disoriented. Had I blacked out for a second? I glanced at the wall clock. It read 9:12 p.m. I checked my phone. 9:14 p.m. Close enough. I sighed, pressed the watch between my palms. It remained at 3 o'clock. I tried not to think about it too much, tried to be rational. It was just a broken watch, right? A family heirloom that hadn't worked in decades, but why did I feel the hairs on my neck standing on end? I sat on the sofa and forced myself to inhale slowly. In, out. My lungs still felt squeezed. The silence thickened until I heard the faint creak of floorboards overhead. I knew no one was upstairs. The attic was empty, just old junk and boxes. Yet I heard footsteps, soft, deliberate steps. My chest tightened and I shot to my feet. The watch's chain clanked against the coffee table as I set it down, determined to investigate, to prove to myself that nothing was there. I climbed the stairs, my throat dry, each step slower than the last. The attic door was at the end of the hall. I reached it, hand trembling on the knob. The metal felt like ice. I pushed it open, squinting into the darkness. Dust motes swirled in the faint light from the hallway. I pulled the chain of the old bulb hanging from the rafters. The bare light flickered, but at least it stayed on. Boxes, trunks, old lamps, and my grandfather's ancient tools sat in silent disarray. No one here. Of course. I listened carefully. Nothing but my heartbeat. The attic smelled of mold and old varnish. I turned to go back downstairs when something caught my eye. A small leather-bound notebook, half tucked behind a wooden crate. I picked it up. Its cover bore the same strange symbols I'd seen on the watch's casing. I flipped through pages scrawled in my grandfather's neat handwriting. Words jumped out. Stolen time, cycles, trapped in 3, watch demands. My chest constricted. I snapped the notebook shut. The light sputtered. Suddenly I felt dizzy again. The world tilted. The bulb dimmed to darkness, then flared painfully bright. I stumbled forward, leaning against a trunk. When I regained my balance and opened the attic door, the hallway was darker than before. My phone screen said 10:25 p.m., but it felt like I'd only spent a minute or two upstairs. Did I lose nearly an hour? Back downstairs, I found the watch right where I'd left it. But something was different. My arms felt numb, as if they'd fallen asleep. Rolling up my sleeves, I saw faint marks etched into my skin, shallow geometric lines like the patterns on the watch. They didn't hurt, they didn't bleed. They were just there. Panic gnawed at my stomach. I tried rubbing them away. They didn't fade. I rushed to the bathroom, flicked on the light. The bulb buzzed, then stabilized. My reflection in the mirror looked pale. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to shake this feeling. That's when I noticed my right arm's pattern had grown more intricate, a tiny wheel shape near my elbow that hadn't been there seconds before. I pressed my fingertips to it. No pain, no sensation, just that haunting pattern. A whisper drifted in from the hallway, a single rasped syllable. I rushed out, wet footprints marking the floor. The watch seemed heavier now, as if it had absorbed my fear. I tried to call someone. My phone's battery was inexplicably low. The call wouldn't connect. Outside, the wind howled. The windows rattled, but no light came through the curtains, just a dull, moonless darkness. I spent the next hour, or what I thought was an hour, trying to reason this out. I heated water for tea, only to find the kettle cold again when I reached for it. Time kept slipping. One moment I was lighting a candle in the kitchen. The next, I was standing in the hallway with the candle burned halfway down and dripping wax onto my hand, though I felt no pain. Every time I checked the watch, it remained at 3 o'clock. Every time I tried to open it, I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to confront that mirrored face. Still, I needed answers. Maybe if I looked closer, I could figure out what was happening. Eventually, I sat at the desk in the study, the notebook beside me, and forced myself to open the watch again. The tiny door creaked. Inside, I saw my reflection, distorted and pale, eyes wide and desperate. But behind my reflection, I could have sworn there was another face, thin, angular, its eyes like hollow clock hands. I gasped and slammed the watch shut. The lamp overhead flickered, then went out. In the darkness, the whispers grew bolder. They hissed inside my ears, slipping under my thoughts. The temperature plunged. My breath came in ragged gasps. I reached for the desk lamp's chain, praying for light. When it flickered back on, I found myself holding the watch again, my fingers trembling. The patterns on my arms had spread across my shoulders now, faint lines running toward my collarbone. I wanted to scream, but I held it in, swallowing the panic. I had to do something. I had to get rid of this cursed object. I stood up, stumbling through the corridor, nearly knocking over a vase. I headed for the front door. My intention was clear. I'd toss the watch outside, bury it in the garden, throw it into the street, anything to break its hold. But as I neared the door, the latch jammed. I pulled, twisted, shouted at the empty hall. The whispers mocked me. My ears rang. The door wouldn't budge. My heart raced. I turned to the window, tried lifting it. Stuck. The house was sealed. I cursed under my breath, pacing the living room as the light overhead flickered again. Each flicker cost me a moment in time. Each heartbeat felt slower, as if the watch were twisting the seconds at its will. What if I smashed it, destroyed it entirely? I found my grandfather's old hammer in a kitchen drawer. With shaking hands, I set the watch on the dining table and raised the hammer. The moment the hammer's head swung down, the lights died. In that blackness, something cold wrapped around my wrist. I froze. When the lights fluttered back, I stood empty-handed. The watch was gone from the table. The hammer lay on the floor. My arms were now covered entirely in those patterns, beautifully intricate and terrifyingly alien. My breathing came in shallow bursts. I had to face this thing, whatever it was. I stumbled back to the study. The notebook lay open now, though I didn't remember leaving it that way. One phrase stood out. To escape its cycle, face the reflection and deny its claim. So I opened the watch again, gripping it tightly. I forced my eyes onto that tiny reflective surface. I saw my face twisted with fear, and behind it, faint but visible, the other presence, like a silhouette trapped behind glass. I clenched my jaw, tears in my eyes. "You can't have my time," I whispered. My voice cracked, but I repeated the words, louder. "You can't have my time." A sudden jolt struck me as if static electricity had surged up my arms. The lights flickered madly. I felt a nausea so intense I nearly collapsed. Then abruptly, everything grew quiet. The lamp glowed steadily. The air warmed. I stood there, panting, sweat trickling down my back. The watch still read 3 o'clock, but I sensed a subtle shift. Those patterns on my arms started to fade, just slightly. I closed the watch and set it down on the desk, breathing hard. My legs wobbled as I staggered into the hallway. I flicked the front door latch again, and this time it gave way. A gust of cold night air rushed in. I stepped out onto the porch, sucking in the fresh air, but something still felt off. Before leaving, I took one last look at the watch's face through the study window, its surface faintly reflecting me at the door. For a heartbeat, I swore I saw that hollow-eyed shape hovering behind my reflection again, smiling thinly, as if waiting. My skin felt tight and my heart still pounded. The patterns weren't completely gone. Faint lines remained, forever etched into my flesh. I couldn't bring myself to return inside. The watch was still in there, and I knew it would remain stuck at 3 o'clock. It had let me go for now. But that last reflection suggested it was only biding its time. And as I closed the door behind me, I felt a lingering chill crawling under my skin, reminding me that whatever lived inside that ancient pocket watch had no intention of letting me escape forever. I remember the first time I noticed those damned footprints. It was late afternoon and the light in the basement was already dimming. I had taken a break after hours of packing old boxes and sweeping dusty floors. My throat burned from the stale air, and every breath carried the taste of mold. I was leaning against the wall, rubbing my tired eyes when I saw them. Wet prints, clinging somehow to the ceiling beams, as if someone had walked upside down through the dust and dirt. My heart gave a jolt. I straightened and blinked several times, trying to convince myself that it was just a trick of the low light. But no matter how hard I stared, those prints remained, glistening faintly, their edges uneven, as if formed by something cold and alive. My neck ached as I looked up, the angle awkward. For a moment I stood there, silent, not daring to move. I could feel my pulse thudding behind my ears. This house belonged to my family for decades, though I hadn't set foot in it for years, not since I left it behind for a cramped apartment in the city. I returned only because my uncle asked me. He was too old now, wanted the place cleared out so it could be sold. I never liked this house. It was too large, too quiet. Every corner seemed to hide some unpleasant secret. The basement especially always made me uneasy, but I never imagined finding something like this. I crept closer, my boots scraping over the concrete floor. There was a faint smell I couldn't identify, something sharp and mineral like damp stones. I could just barely see the footprints clearly, a series of ovals, almost shoe-shaped, but not quite. The toes were pointed in a strange direction, and I swear I felt a chill radiating from them. I reached up, trembling, and touched the wood beam where one mark was darkest. My fingertips came away moist, as if dipped in icy dew. A shiver ran down my spine. I stepped backward, careful not to disturb anything else. There was no one here but me, and the door to the basement was locked from the inside. If someone had been here, I would have heard them. How could these footprints appear on the ceiling? The logic of it made no sense. My eyes darted around, searching the corners. The only objects were a few boxes, an old dresser, some tools, and that tall, ornate mirror leaning against the far wall. That mirror, old with a tarnished frame of swirling patterns, came with the house. I remember it from my childhood, always covered with a sheet, always shoved somewhere dark. Now it stood uncovered, reflecting the weak light of a single bulb. For a moment, I saw my own reflection distorted by specks and cracks. Then, behind me, something like a ripple. I turned, but there was nothing. The footprints remained still and silent. I didn't sleep well that night. My new mattress shoved into the old upstairs bedroom felt lumpy. I kept imagining wet sounds just below the floorboards, and at times I sat up, holding my breath, listening. The next morning, when I forced myself down the basement steps, I found the footprints again, only this time they had changed positions. Now they ran along the side wall, as if someone had walked vertically toward the mirror. I cursed under my breath, my stomach twisted. I ran my palm over my stubbly chin, trying to think logically. Maybe water was seeping through cracks, forming patterns as it dried. But why these shapes, and why always changing places? I knelt and examined them closely. Still moist, still chilling to the touch. They seemed to be leading me closer to the mirror. Over the next few days, I tried to work as normally as possible. I moved boxes upstairs, sorted old family documents, stacked furniture to be taken away. But I kept checking the basement. Every morning, the footprints would be somewhere new, on a beam, on the opposite wall, sometimes even looping in a bizarre spiral. Each time, they looked fresh, as if just formed. Each time, that strange mineral smell hung in the air, and each time the mirror caught my eye. I noticed that whenever I approached it, my reflection seemed slightly off, my movements delayed by a fraction, or the angle skewed, as if the world behind the glass didn't match mine. On the fourth day, I tried an experiment. I brought a thick plastic tarp and covered the mirror completely. I hammered a small nail into the beam and hung a dusty old quilt over it, just to be sure. Then I swept the basement floor, letting the dust settle, trying to ignore the clammy feeling that crawled up my arms. After that, I locked the basement and went to town to run some errands, convinced that I'd stop this nonsense once and for all. When I returned that evening, I found the tarp and quilt tossed aside, crumpled in a corner. The footprints were on the ceiling again, but now they formed a trail that zigzagged, as if frustrated. My breath caught in my throat. My heart drummed so loudly I could barely hear my own thoughts. I snapped the overhead light off and on, but nothing changed. The mirror stood there, uncovered, reflecting me standing rigid at the bottom of the stairs, a faint sheen of sweat on my forehead. I wanted to run. Every muscle in my body screamed for me to leave this place, to just walk out and never come back. But I needed money from selling the house, and I had promised my uncle I'd finish the job. Besides, there was a gnawing curiosity in me now, some desperate need to understand what was happening. Maybe something wanted to communicate with me. Maybe these impossible footprints were some code, a pattern I was meant to decipher. So I watched them more closely. Each day they rearranged, forming shapes I couldn't quite identify. Sometimes they looked like arrows pointing toward the mirror. Sometimes they formed looping curves that made my head spin if I stared too long. I tried writing down their positions, drawing sketches, but nothing made sense. My hands would tremble as I attempted to capture the patterns on paper. My breath would grow shallow, and I'd feel a crawling sensation at the back of my neck, as if invisible eyes followed my every move. I tried talking to the empty room. "What do you want?" I whispered one night, my voice cracking. The footprints were quiet, unmoving, just dark spots glistening along a ceiling beam. I approached the mirror, my heart hammering. "Is there someone there?" I asked, my reflection staring back, pale and tense. Nothing replied. But as I turned to leave, I caught a flicker in the corner of my eye, a subtle distortion as if the reflection had shifted a split second after I did. By the end of the week, I felt like I hadn't slept in years. My head throbbed. My mouth tasted like copper. I jumped at every creak of the old wooden floors. I found myself avoiding the basement, but at the same time I felt drawn to it, unable to stop checking. On a particularly tense afternoon, I decided to inspect the back of the mirror. Removing it from its leaning position, I discovered something taped to the wooden backing. A photograph, old and faded, showing a figure standing in this very basement, holding a lantern. The figure's face was blurred, and behind him I swear I could see faint footprints on the walls. It must have been taken decades ago. My stomach lurched. I wiped sweat from my brow, feeling nauseous. The patterns, the footprints, they weren't new. Someone else had witnessed this before. The old mirror must be connected to this phenomenon. Was it a gateway? A window into some inverted place where gravity worked differently and strange beings crept along surfaces? That night I stood in front of the mirror with a flashlight. The footprints were arranged in a circle above me. My pulse pounded so hard I thought I'd faint. I stared at my reflection, lifting my hand slowly. My reflection did the same. I leaned forward until my breath fogged the glass. The smell of minerals grew stronger, colder. My throat tightened. I reached out and touched the mirror's surface. It felt frigid, more so than normal glass. I pressed harder. For a split second I felt a resistance that didn't seem physical, like trying to push through a layer of thick, invisible jelly. The footprints above me suddenly glistened brighter, droplets forming at their edges, dripping cold water onto my shoulder. I jerked back, wiping my neck with a trembling hand. Had I angered it? Whatever it was? My lamp flickered. My legs were shaking now, sweat trickling down my spine. I muttered, "Stop this, please." My voice sounded weak and hollow. The footprints remained. I dared to look into the mirror once more. This time something felt off. My reflection's eyes seemed darker, as if ringed by shadow. The shape of my mouth looked slightly different, twisted. I blinked hard. My reflection blinked too, but not in perfect sync. There was a delay, a subtle lag. My gut clenched and I stumbled backward, nearly falling over a pile of old books. I couldn't stay here. I needed to leave the basement, maybe call someone, though who would believe me? No one had died. Nothing was broken, but I was losing my mind down here. I had to do something drastic. Gathering my courage, I seized the quilt from the floor and approached the mirror again. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold it. I wanted to cover the mirror and drag it out of the house, but as I reached up, I felt something icy graze my forearm, like a cold fingertip. I gasped and jumped back, shining my flashlight wildly around. Nothing. Just me and my silent tormentor. The footprints began to shift. Before my eyes they moved, as if seeping along the wood, forming a long line that stretched toward the corner where the mirror stood. My breath came in short bursts, my heart on the verge of bursting. I had to decide. Either run now and never look back, or face this thing head on. I thought of my uncle, of my promise. I thought of the photograph. Someone before me had encountered this. They had left that photo as a warning, or maybe as a clue. Teeth clenched, I lunged forward and threw the quilt over the mirror. The fabric clung there for a second. I pressed my palm against it, holding it tight. The air in the basement grew colder, making my joints ache. I felt a rattling beneath my hand, as though something on the other side of the glass was trying to push through. My vision blurred with tears. I pressed harder, praying silently that it would stop. Then, suddenly, silence. The rattling eased. The chill subsided a fraction. I stepped back, trembling, tears streaking my face. The footprints remained on the ceiling, now just dark patches of moisture, but they didn't move. They seemed subdued, at least for the moment. I left the basement, locking it behind me, my legs barely holding my weight. That night I slept only a few hours, jolting awake at every whisper of the house's ancient pipes. In the morning I found a thin layer of condensation under the basement door, as if something was breathing down there. My reflection in the hallway mirror looked hollow-eyed. and I swear my eyes were beginning to resemble those I saw in the basement mirror, darker, slightly out of sync with my movements. I'm packing my things now. I've decided to leave this house for good, even if I break my promise. I can't sell it. Who would buy a place like this anyway? As I walk past the stairwell, I hear a faint drip, drip, drip. I know if I open that door, I'll see new patterns of footprints, maybe even handprints, forming impossible trails across the walls and ceiling. I know the mirror waits there, covered but never truly contained. Before leaving, I take one last look at the small mirror in the front hallway. For a second, I could swear my reflection stands at a slightly different angle, its head tilted as if listening to something I can't hear. My stomach clenches. I run my tongue over my dry lips. I don't dare linger. I know what I've seen. I know the danger isn't gone. It's just waiting. The next time I come across a reflection, I might see those footprints behind me, or feel that icy presence lingering at my shoulder. And if I ever do return, I'll find that old basement mirror waiting, its hidden world ready to spill over into mine. I swear I can still feel the chill crawling up my neck as I sit here, struggling to steady my breath. Even now, the walls of this old house seem to press in on me as if they know something I don't. I've been living here alone for a few weeks, ever since my aunt passed away and left the place in my name. At first, it felt like a half-hearted blessing. The house was old and heavy with silence, but I figured I could fix it up, sell it, move on. No one else seemed interested in it anyway. But tonight, the air inside these rooms feels charged, as though something is alive and watching. I'm in the upstairs hallway by the attic door, holding my breath. I can't help but think back to earlier this evening when I found that mask. The one made of pale ceramic with its blank white face and faintly visible brushstrokes around the eyes. I remember the exact moment I touched it. The surface was unexpectedly warm, and as my fingertips grazed its cheek, a prickling sensation swept along my spine, leaving my stomach tight and queasy. I found the mask in a battered cardboard box tucked behind an old wardrobe in the attic. There was a damp smell up there, wood rot and stale air. I had gone up just to poke around, maybe find something valuable or at least learn a bit about my aunt's past. When I pushed aside a layer of yellowed newspapers and dusty doilies, I saw it, this pale face staring blindly upward, half buried in clutter. I can't say why I picked it up. Curiosity, I guess. It's the kind of object you'd see in an antique shop window. Cracked glaze, discolored edges. There was something unsettling in the simplicity of its features, just empty eye holes and a subtle raise where lips might be. After feeling that strange shock at my first touch, I tried to shrug it off. I carried it downstairs and hung it on the living room wall, thinking it might add some character. The house is full of old junk anyway, but as the evening wore on, something felt off. Each time I walked past the living room, I could swear the mask's expression shifted. Not dramatically, no wide grin or glaring scowl, but slight changes in the shape of the cracks. Around midnight, I found myself pausing in front of it with the lights out, and the faint moonlight showed tiny fractures branching across the ceramic surface. Those lines formed something like a twisted smile, a grin too subtle to be sure if I was imagining it. Yet my heart pounded all the same. I decided I'd had enough of that feeling. I tugged at the mask, trying to lift it off the wall, but it held fast, as if the hook were bent. I didn't want to break it or make noise that would rattle my nerves more, so I left it there and went upstairs to try to sleep. Still, my head buzzed with an uneasy energy. When I flicked off the bedroom lamp, I heard something downstairs. A muffled laugh, low and scratchy, as if heard through layers of thick fabric. I froze, holding my breath, listening to the silence afterward. Maybe it was the old pipes, or the wind scraping a branch along the siding. I tried to convince myself of that, but my chest tightened with a sensation of being watched. Eventually, I drifted into a restless sleep. I can't tell you what I dreamt, but I know it was unpleasant. I woke up at some point in the early hours, 3, maybe 4 in the morning, my throat dry, my heart hammering. My neck ached. I fumbled for the bedside lamp and blinked as the light stung my eyes. And that's when I saw it. The mask lying right next to the bed as if it had been gently placed there. My stomach flipped. I know I left it downstairs. There was no one else in the house. My fingers trembled as I reached out, feeling the cool ceramic once more. My hand recoiled as soon as I touched its surface. I swallowed hard and backed away, pressing myself against the headboard. Did I sleepwalk? Did I go downstairs and bring it up in some half-conscious stupor? The idea made me sweat. I examined the bedroom door. It was still locked from the inside. I remembered turning the key before lying down. How could that be? Too scared to go back to sleep, I spent the rest of the night sitting upright in bed, listening. The silence of the house was absolute. I felt as if I could hear my own blood pulsing behind my ears. The mask lay there on the floor, face up, its cracks still forming that subtle, mocking smile. I watched it for hours. It did not move again, but I could not shake the feeling it was waiting. By morning, with sunlight cutting through the thin curtains, I gathered the courage to pick it up again. My hand shook as I carried it back downstairs. The living room looked the same. Old furniture, a stuffy rug, the smell of damp wood that never seems to leave. I placed the mask on the coffee table and sat across from it, studying it under the pale morning light. The cracks were more pronounced now, and they traced delicate patterns around the eye holes. If I looked long enough, I began to see something like character behind that vacant stare. It felt as if the mask was sizing me up. I needed answers. I rummaged through the old papers in the study. My aunt's faded letters, receipts from decades past, handwritten notes that mentioned nothing of a mask. I found a few Polaroids tucked in a drawer. My aunt in her younger years smiling next to people I didn't recognize, everyone dressed in old-fashioned clothes. In the background of one picture, I spotted something hanging on a wall, a shape that could have been the mask or something very similar. In another photo, a group stood around a large, ornate wooden box. Their faces were grim. The mask was not visible in this one, but I sensed a connection I couldn't prove. I tried to push the worry aside. I made lunch, chewing slowly, barely tasting the food. The mask remained on the coffee table. I could see it from where I sat in the kitchen. It was like having company, an unwelcome guest who never speaks, but always stares. I cleared my throat, half expecting an echo. Nothing. Only that tense silence. When dusk came, the tension in my chest returned. I decided I'd had enough. I took a spare sheet from a closet and draped it over the mask. The fabric settled over it, swallowing that eerie grin. Out of sight, out of mind, I told myself. Perhaps I could leave this place tomorrow, find a buyer who wouldn't ask too many questions. I went upstairs and prepared myself for another long night. My limbs felt heavy. I tried to read, but my eyes kept drifting to the doorway, expecting a soft scratch or a stifled giggle. Eventually, I turned off the lights. I lay there in the darkness, my heart thumping. For a few minutes, nothing happened. No noises, no shifting shadows. Just as I began to hope I might fall asleep, I heard it again, that muffled laughter. I shot upright, my breath catching. It sounded closer this time, on the other side of the door. I grabbed a flashlight and crept into the hallway, the floorboards creaking under my bare feet. Downstairs, the living room was dim. The sheet I had draped was gone, folded neatly on the armchair. The mask hung once again on the wall, though I don't remember putting it back there. Its cracks had deepened, forming a network of lines that curved into a manic grin. I aimed the flashlight at it, my hand shaking so badly the beam wobbled. Then I saw the mask's surface ripple just slightly as though its ceramic skin were alive. I stumbled backward, knocking into a side table and sending a vase to the floor with a dull thud. Panicking, I tried to breathe slowly, to think clearly. Maybe if I took it outside and buried it or smashed it to pieces, no. The idea made my stomach knot. Some instinct warned me that destroying it wouldn't solve anything. It wanted something. I could feel that desire emanating from it. The mask wanted me to wear it. The thought was absurd, but it clung to me. If I put it on, what would happen? Would I lose myself behind that porcelain grin? My hands grew clammy. I reached for the mask, determined to end this. As my fingertips touched its edge, I felt a pulse like a heartbeat thrum through my palm. I gagged, pulling away. My knees threatened to give out. I could smell something like burnt dust and old paper. I rushed to the kitchen, desperate for a solution. I thought about calling someone, but who would believe me? The phone line crackled with static. I slammed it down, frustrated and scared. My breath came in ragged gasps. The house felt different now, the temperature dropping. I glanced at my reflection in the microwave's glass door. My face was pale, eyes wide with terror. Behind me, in that distorted reflection, I saw the mask peering from the hallway. Its grin stretched, cracking further. The ceramic flakes drifting to the floor sounded like tiny bones snapping. My throat tightened. I spun around. Nothing in the hallway. But when I turned back to the reflection, it was there again, closer. It was playing games with me. My stomach churned. This had to end. I crept back into the living room. The mask hung innocently on the wall, blank and lifeless under the dim lamp. I stood beneath it, sweat trickling down my temples. I reached up, pressing my fingertips against it. The cracking lines felt like scars. Slowly, I lifted the mask off the hook. My body trembled so hard I almost dropped it. For a moment, I considered putting it on, just to see if it would release me afterward, if it would stop tormenting me. But the idea of placing that thing over my face made my chest tighten as if in a vice. Instead, I wrapped the mask in the sheet again and shoved it into a box. I dragged the box into the hallway closet and slammed the door, turning the key in the lock. A poor solution, but I needed a moment to think. Back upstairs, I tried to calm myself. My heart wouldn't settle. My throat felt raw. As I splashed water on my face in the bathroom, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My eyes looked different, almost unfamiliar. The skin around them seemed tighter, as if drawn by invisible wires. For a second, I swore I saw thin cracks etched near my temples, faint but real. I touched them, and they vanished. Just my imagination, I told myself. Just stress. I returned to the bedroom and locked the door. I pushed the dresser against it for good measure. Outside, the wind picked up, scraping a branch against the glass. I tried not to think of muffled laughter or shifting smiles. I sank onto the bed, exhausted. But as I closed my eyes, I heard a soft scraping sound inside the room. My throat tightened. I flicked on the lamp. Nothing. I looked at the floor beside my bed and froze. A tiny ceramic chip lay there, a piece of the mask's glaze, shining dully in the light. I picked it up with trembling fingers. How had it escaped the closet? My reflection in the bedroom window caught my eye, and I saw something else. The faint outline of a grin playing across my own mouth, a grin I did not feel myself making. I tried to straighten my lips, to frown, but my cheeks twitched as if pulled by invisible strings. I dropped the chip and it landed with a soft click on the wooden floor. I still can't fully explain what this means. But as I sit here, trapped inside these old rooms, I know that the mask is not done with me. I can feel it even now, whispering without sound, waiting just beyond the door. Tomorrow I might leave, if I find the courage. But right now, as the air thickens and my heart pounds, I can sense it pressing closer, drawn to the last fragile barrier of my identity. If I'm not careful, it will have me wear it. And if I do, I'm not sure I'll ever see my own face again. I first noticed it late in the evening, a little past midnight, when the only light in the living room came from the street lamp outside. I was resting on the old armchair near the fireplace, the cushions still smelling faintly of stale tobacco and damp wood, trying to calm my nerves after another restless day. The silence had settled around me like a thick blanket, and I remember the uneasy warmth of my own breath inside my nostrils. That was when I caught a movement at the corner of my vision, something dark shifting across the far wall. I turned my head sharply, my neck stiff from hours of tension. There should have been nothing there. The lamp in the corner was off, and the curtains were drawn, leaving only that weak golden light from outside. No one else was in the room. Yet I saw it again, a black shape sliding smoothly along the surface of the white plaster, as though cast by a figure standing between the wall and a light source that didn't exist. A shadow without a body. I stood slowly, my knees tight, a slight tremor in my fingertips. I tried to approach it. Each step I took caused the floorboards to whisper low creaks that I could feel in my teeth. As I moved closer, the thing receded, not disappearing entirely, but slithering into the dimmer corners, flattening itself into angles and edges like it belonged there. It reminded me of a scared animal, flinching from my approach but refusing to vanish. When I reached out, running my hand over the smooth paint on the wall, I found nothing. I'd come to this old house about a week earlier, after inheriting it from an uncle I barely knew. I'd planned on staying just a few nights, sorting through the papers and furniture, seeing what might be worth keeping before I put the place on the market. It wasn't a grand estate, just a single-story home at the end of a narrow road in a sleepy town. The kind of place that feels slightly too old, with walls that hold memories better left undisturbed. Still, I had nowhere else pressing to be, and I had told myself I could endure a bit of discomfort. It was on the third night that I first spotted the shadow. Before that, I had sensed something odd, a lingering scent of old varnish and something metallic, the way the air tasted dry in my mouth even when it rained outside, and the way my skin prickled whenever I passed through the hallway leading to the living room. There was also that antique mirror I found in the storage closet, an oval frame, chipped at the edges, with a faint cloudy swirl at its center. It made my reflection seem off, as if the glass refused to show my face properly. I'd leaned it against a corner wall for now, unsure what to do with it. After my first attempt to confront the shadow, I spent the remainder of the night seated in the armchair, every muscle tensed. Occasionally, I would catch a quick slither at the edge of my vision, a dark fluid line drifting across the far wall. Each time I turned my head, it darted away, hiding behind shelves or slipping beneath the outline of furniture. If I rushed toward it, it faded instantly, and when I tried to shine my flashlight directly at it, the beam cut through empty space. No shape, no silhouette. Yet, as soon as I settled back and turned my gaze elsewhere, it would appear again, closer than before. Exhausted, I tried to sleep, but it was hopeless. Each time my eyes drooped, the feeling of a presence, something watching, jerked me awake. My body felt damp with sweat. My heart refused to slow down. Eventually, as dawn approached, I forced myself to do something practical. I marched into the small kitchen, washed my face with cold water, and boiled some coffee. The coffee tasted bitter, metallic on my tongue, but it steadied me. I decided to explore the house in daylight, hoping that I might find some clue. The morning sun bled through the curtains, revealing dust motes and old furniture that needed cleaning. I examined old shelves, creaky drawers, piles of papers left behind by my uncle. Nothing explained what I had seen. Still, the mirror caught my attention. It was older than the rest of the house's decor. Carved into its wooden frame were strange patterns, curving lines and small notch-like symbols that I hadn't noticed before. I ran my fingertip over them, feeling shallow grooves. It left me uneasy, so I covered the mirror with a sheet and placed it face down against the wall. The rest of the day passed quietly enough. I tried to rationalize the night's events. Perhaps the flickering of a passing car's headlight, or a trick of tired eyes. I even considered leaving the house, but I wanted to finish sorting through everything. I tried to rest that afternoon. I lay on the couch, listening to the wind rattling the window panes, and nearly dozed off. That night, the tension returned the moment the sun dipped below the horizon. I prepared myself, a flashlight in hand, a lantern lit near the door, and my phone's weak light as backup. I waited in the living room, my throat dry, knees bent slightly, ready for anything. For a while, nothing happened. Just silence. and my own pulse drumming in my ears. Then I caught a glimpse, the shadow sliding out from behind the covered mirror. I swear it emerged from beneath the sheet, like ink seeping through fabric. This time it moved more boldly, tracing a path along the wall above the fireplace. Slowly it formed shapes, geometric patterns, something like twisted runes. It didn't remain still. It flowed and stretched, creating one symbol after another, as if it wanted me to see them, to understand something I couldn't decipher. I tried to approach again, my breath coming in short bursts. When I got too close, it shrank away, darting into the corner near an old cabinet. My frustration boiled over. I shouted at it, my voice echoing hollowly. The shadow did not respond with sound, but I felt it shift, its presence thickening the air. My skin prickled and I tasted fear in the back of my throat, sharp and acrid. I flicked the flashlight's beam at the spot where the shadow had been. Nothing. Only pale plaster and a trembling sheen of sweat on my upper lip. I realized something then. It followed me when I turned my back. I tested this, stepping away, pretending to ignore it. With my peripheral vision, I watched the darkness slide across the wall, inching closer, curling around door frames and shelves, trying to position itself behind me. Every time I spun around quickly, it pulled back. It was toying with me. I needed a new tactic. I thought about the mirror. If this thing was connected to that old piece, if it had somehow awakened when I uncovered it, maybe I could force it back or at least understand it. Heart pounding, I approached the spot where I'd placed the mirror face down. Keeping my eyes partly averted, I knelt, gripped the edges of the frame, and slowly tilted it upright. My arms shook as I removed the sheet. The mirror's surface was dull, almost foggy, as if it trapped a thin layer of dust between the glass and the world. I tilted it to catch any available light. Behind me, I heard a faint scraping sound, like a fingernail on wood. I turned the mirror to face the wall where the shadow had been lingering. Perhaps it would reflect it, reveal its source. But as I watched the glass, I saw only my own silhouette. Then something else flickered there. A ripple of black ink, a shape slicing across the reflection's background. I slammed the mirror against the floor, rattling the boards. My breathing was ragged. The shadow scattered for a moment, fleeing into the darkness near the ceiling. I was drenched in sweat now. The lantern's flame wavered, and the sudden dimness made my stomach lurch. I could feel the weight of the house pressing down on me, the old wood and plaster soaking up my fear. I considered leaving right then, just grabbing my keys and driving away. But I needed to be sure. What if it followed me? What if it lived in reflective surfaces, lurking behind me whenever I turned off the lights? I had nowhere to go but forward, so I decided to cover every reflective surface I could find. I draped sheets over the mirror, over the few framed pictures, even the TV screen. I searched drawers until I found a cracked hand mirror and placed it face down in a box. Without reflections, I hoped, it would have nowhere to hide. For a few minutes, I felt safer. I moved slowly around the room, keeping my back close to the wall, listening for even the slightest shift. The silence was profound. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it again, faint but unmistakable, moving across the ceiling now, upside down and elongated like a shadow cast by a low flame. It stretched into impossible angles, forming jagged symbols that made my stomach twist. I raised my flashlight and aimed it upwards. The beam struck the plaster, and for a moment I saw tiny scratch marks, shallow grooves in the paint, as if something had etched lines there when I wasn't looking. My heart thumped painfully. It was carving its presence into the house. My chest tightened. I shouted again, my voice cracking. Still no answer, just a long whispering sound as the shape retracted, leaving behind faint marks that I could feel with my fingertips, grooves that spelled something I couldn't comprehend. I knew I had to leave. I grabbed my jacket and stumbled toward the front door, nearly knocking over a stack of old newspapers. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. I sucked in big gulps, trying to calm the shaking in my legs. The street was empty. Just the distant hum of a car far away and the rustling of leaves. For a moment I considered not returning. But the papers, the mirror, the house, this was all my responsibility now. I was afraid of what I might unleash on someone else if I ran, so I waited outside until my breathing steadied, then forced myself back in. Inside, I found the lantern's flame had died. I lit it again, carefully. The shadow wasn't immediately visible. I walked around slowly, whispering curses under my breath. The walls seemed normal, except for those faint scratches near the ceiling. By the time dawn approached, I felt hollow and feverish. My heart still pounded, and every muscle ached. Now it's morning again. I haven't slept. The covered mirror leans in the corner, silent but heavy with meaning. I don't know how to rid myself of this presence. It hasn't harmed me, hasn't touched me, but I can feel it draining something from me. The comfort of being alone in my own skin. I see slight movements when I least expect them. A corner of shadow bending along the baseboard, a flicker in the reflection of a window pane. I'm leaving today, but I suspect it might follow. Even now, as I look at my phone's black screen to check the time, I catch a glimpse of something shifting behind me, folding itself into impossible shapes. I can feel the weight of eyes that aren't eyes lingering on my back. A chill settles in my bones whenever I turn away from any reflective surface. I don't know what it wants or why it chose this house. I only know that it's not gone. The marks on the walls remain. The memory of its silent presence will travel with me. And next time I catch my reflection in some random storefront window, I'll look carefully for that flicker of darkness sliding along the edges, waiting for me to turn my back. I noticed the cat again tonight right outside my bedroom window. I was lying in bed, breathing hard, unable to sleep, when I saw its shape glide across the patch of dry grass near the back fence. The motion caught my eye because it was too smooth, too silent. Usually cats make some noise, a scratch on bark, a faint rustle of leaves, or at least the soft tapping of paws on soil. Not this one. This one drifted, barely touching the ground, as if guided by an invisible hand. And then those eyes, faded, almost colorless like washed-out marbles, turned toward me, drilling through the glass. My heart gave a jolt, and I sat up, gripping the edge of the mattress. I tried to focus on my breathing, but I felt my chest tighten. The cat stared, unblinking. There was something off about it. The whites of its eyes were fine, but the irises were pale, drained, as if the animal had bled all color into the night. I swallowed, tasting bitter saliva. I didn't move for a long moment, hoping it would lose interest, but it didn't. It was there yesterday too, and the day before. Always at twilight, always watching. I'm not from here, I should say that. I inherited this old place after my uncle passed, no children, no close family besides me. I moved in a few months ago, figuring I'd fix the creaky floors and the cracked wallpaper, then sell it. The house is older than I realized. Every step I take inside brings a moan of protest from the wood, and every door handle has a dull brass finish that seems to stick to my fingers. Still, I thought I could handle it. But since that cat showed up, the house feels stranger, like it's not entirely mine. I got up and walked to the window, pressing my forehead gently against the cold glass. The back porch light barely reached the edge of the yard, but I could still see the cat's silhouette. "Go!" I hissed, rapping my knuckles on the window. It didn't budge. Instead, it tilted its head as if trying to understand me. My spine prickled. I was done with this weird game. I rushed down the hallway, flipping on the lights, heading for the kitchen door that leads out back. I didn't bother with shoes. Outside, the air smelled of damp leaves and old wood. My bare feet touched the rough concrete step, and my stomach churned. I expected the cat to run when it saw me. I wanted that. But when I stepped into the yard, it remained still, perched near the fence with its tail curled around its paws. I closed in, arms raised, trying to shoo it off. "Get out!" I shouted, my voice trembling. The cat blinked slowly. Then right in front of me, it vanished. I don't mean it ran away. I mean it blinked out of sight, like a light switch flicked off. One heartbeat it was there, solid and real, and the next, nothing. My legs felt weak and I gripped the railing of the porch steps to keep from collapsing. Then I heard a faint scraping sound behind me. I turned, and there it was again, perched on the opposite corner of the yard, observing. I felt my mouth go dry. I backed away slowly, one hand groping for the door handle. Inside, I locked everything. Doors, windows, even the old pantry latch. I was breathing fast, my mind spinning. I tried to think logically. Maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe the dim light played tricks on my eyes. But deep inside, I knew something was very wrong. The cat had moved in ways no normal animal could. It felt like it was not just watching. I had the unsettling sensation it was studying me. That night I barely slept. I tossed and turned in bed, feeling clammy sweat coating the back of my neck. I imagined the cat's face pushing against the window pane, those pale eyes tracking every shift of my blankets. Eventually I got up, rummaged through the old closets for something to distract me. I found a stack of documents and a bundle of old photographs tucked into a dusty shoebox. Most were faded snapshots of the house as it once was. A family gathered in front of the porch, an older man holding a lantern near the barn that used to stand out back. My uncle had mentioned that the property had a longer history than I knew, but we never got into details. One photo caught my eye, a young woman at the back fence, holding something small in her arms. Behind her, I could just make out a slim shape with pointed ears. The photo was blurred, but the cat-like figure seemed to have no defined face, just two pale spots where eyes should be. A chill ran down my spine. I placed the photo aside, heart thumping. I needed to calm down to ground myself. I made tea, the bitter smell of the leaves filling the kitchen. For a moment I tried to forget, but as I poured the tea, my reflection in the dark window above the sink caught my attention. I could see myself, tired eyes, messy hair, and behind me, something else. I spun around, nearly knocking over the cup. The kitchen was empty. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been there, right at the threshold of the hall. The next afternoon, I forced myself to go outside again. It was quiet. The light was gentler then, and for a brief period, I allowed myself to breathe normally. I hammered a loose board on the porch rail, took out trash, tried to maintain some semblance of normal life. By early evening, I closed all the curtains and double-checked the locks. I paced the living room, glancing at the old grandfather clock near the stairs. The silence felt too heavy. My chest tightened again, and I felt a bead of sweat roll down my temple. Suddenly I heard a scratching sound, soft, like nails on wood. It came from the hallway leading to my bedroom. I swallowed, stepping lightly on the creaking floorboards. Each step sounded like a harsh whisper warning me to turn back. I reached the bedroom door and pressed my ear to it. Silence. Holding my breath, I turned the knob and entered. The cat was inside on top of my dresser, its tail swishing slowly. For a moment, my heart stopped. The windows were closed, the door had been locked. How did it get in? It made no sound, just stared at me. I tried to scare it off again, yelling, clapping my hands. It vanished once more. No puff of smoke, no blur, just gone. This time it reappeared near my closet. I lunged forward, but before I could reach it, it disappeared again and reappeared behind me, closer than before. My head was pounding, my vision blurred at the edges, and I could smell my own sweat. The cat's presence pressed in on me, as if the room were shrinking. I stumbled out, slamming the door. After a few shaky breaths, I realized I had to know what this thing was. If I didn't understand it, I'd lose my mind. I spent hours searching the house, looking behind dusty curtains and inside old trunks. Eventually, I found a small wooden box under the loose floorboard in the study. Inside were handwritten notes, yellowed and flaking, along with another photograph. This picture showed the house's previous owner, my great-grandfather, I think, holding a strange mirror. It had an ornate frame, carved with twisting shapes that resembled curled tails and pointed ears. On the back of the photo was a single word: Sentinel. A mirror. The house had once held a mirror with a pattern suspiciously like the cat's silhouette. I looked around the study, scanning the walls. Nothing. I moved through each room, checking behind furniture and in closets until I noticed something odd in the attic door's panel. There was a faint outline in the paint, as if something had once hung there. The smell of stale dust and old wood choked me as I climbed into the attic. I searched with my flashlight, heart hammering. Behind a stack of rotting boards, I found it. The mirror. Its surface was grimy, but I could see faint carvings along the frame. Something about it made my eyes water. My skin prickled with static. As I tried to lift the mirror, a soft thump echoed in the attic's far corner. I swung the flashlight beam over the dusty floorboards. The cat was there. I could see its eyes reflecting the light, but with no color. My pulse skyrocketed, my throat tightening. I knew somehow that this cat and that mirror were connected. It was guarding something. It was here to watch me, to record my behavior, maybe even to prepare the space for whatever force lurked beyond my understanding. I could almost taste metal in my mouth, a tang of fear and rust. I backed away, holding the flashlight in front of me like a weapon. The cat didn't move. Instead, it blinked slowly, and each time its eyes closed, I felt a pulse in my chest. My vision swam. I stumbled, the attic floor seeming to shift under my feet. I fell to one knee, gasping, and the flashlight beam trembled across the dusty rafters. I had to do something. I couldn't just let it corner me here. Summoning whatever courage I had left, I lunged forward, snatching the mirror off the floor. The frame's metal edges bit into my palms and I almost dropped it. The cat hissed then, the first sound I'd heard from it. A dry, rasping hiss that made my stomach twist. A wave of nausea washed over me. I held the mirror between us, aiming it at the cat as if it could somehow repel the creature. For a brief instant, I thought I saw the cat's reflection twist and smear across the glass, as though the mirror refused to hold its image properly. My heart throbbed in my throat. The cat's form shimmered and then vanished again. Only this time it didn't immediately reappear. I scrambled out of the attic, hugging the mirror to my chest. Downstairs, I leaned it face down against the hallway wall, hoping that without facing me it couldn't project whatever presence that cat represented. I waited, sweat trickling down my back, expecting to see those pale eyes at every turn. But it didn't show. That night, I could hardly sleep. Every creak of the house set me on edge and my skin felt charged, as if invisible fingers brushed over my arms and neck. I tried to calm down by telling myself I had gained an advantage. I had the mirror now hidden away. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the cat still lingered in the corners, that it knew I had dared to interfere with something I shouldn't. By morning, my eyes stung from exhaustion. I dared to peek into the hallway. The mirror was still there, face down. I tried not to look at its frame too closely, but I couldn't help noticing the carvings looked more defined now, as if some of the grime had fallen away overnight. I thought I saw tiny shapes, like cats, etched into the metal, each with eyes hollowed out. My heart fluttered. I realized I didn't end this. I only interrupted it. The cat might return. Maybe there were more like it. My fingers trembled as I touched my face, and I realized I felt different. Warmer, unsteady. When I rubbed my eyes, I thought I caught a glimpse of something pale in my own reflection in the window. Something off about my own irises. I stepped closer, hands shaking, and looked again. The light was poor, and it could have been a trick, but for a split second I thought my eyes looked washed out, just like the cat's. I pulled away, heart pounding. I realized I'd never be rid of this feeling, this presence. The cat, and whatever it served, had marked me. Now it knew my routines, the layout of the house, the places I tried to hide. It had my scent, my fear. Outside, a branch scraped the window, making a sound like a faint claw. I jumped, breath catching in my throat. I forced myself to look carefully into the glass again. Nothing but my own face, sweaty, eyes wide, and behind me the dim shape of the hallway. But I felt it. The silence was too tense, too charged. I turned away, pretending not to notice the slight distortion at the edge of my vision, as if something crouched just out of sight. Something that would return, and next time, I wouldn't be sure where it was, or even what it wanted. I knew only that it had set me on edge for good, and now I carried a piece of its emptiness inside me. The house remained silent, but the weight in the air told me the sentinel was still around, waiting. And I was no longer certain if I'd recognize my own reflection when it decided to show its face again. I remember the first time I noticed it, like a subtle tremor at the edge of my perception. It was around 2 ou 3 de manhã, I think. No, probably closer to 2. I had just settled into my armchair after a late shift, too awake to sleep, too tired to do anything productive. There was a low hum in my apartment, the kind you only hear when everything else is dead silent. I was about to drift into a kind of half-sleep when I heard the faintest vibration against my front door. The sound was soft at first, like fingertips skimming the wood, but then it turned into a series of dull thuds, spaced out and careful. I sat up, heart pounding, and strained to listen. No voices, no footsteps, just that quiet, insistent tapping. My apartment's tiny hallway felt suddenly narrower. The overhead light hummed, casting a weak, yellowish glow over the peeling wallpaper and the scuffed floorboards. The building was old and I'd gotten used to creaks and rattles, but this was different. It felt aimed at me. After a few minutes, I got to my feet and approached the door. My shirt stuck to my back, and I realized I was sweating. I pressed my ear against the wood. Nothing. I grabbed the doorknob, took a breath, and opened it fast, hoping to catch whoever was out there. Empty. Just the corridor that connected the row of apartments, stretching to the left and right, dimly lit by a single overhead bulb. At the far end, near the stairwell, there was an old mirror mounted on the wall. It belonged to the building, though I never understood why it was there. Its frame was ornate, chipped, and the glass always looked a bit clouded. Still, no sign of anyone. I stepped out just enough to peek around the corner. Nothing. I shut the door, locked it, and tried to relax. But that night I hardly slept. I kept thinking maybe I'd imagined it. After all, I was tired, and lately I'd been stressed about money. This apartment was supposed to be a short-term rental, a cheap place while I got back on my feet after losing my previous job. Instead, I'd ended up staying longer than intended. Months, actually. Maybe too many months. The place felt like a trap. The neighbors came and went, rarely saying hello. Sometimes I wondered if anyone else even lived here. The walls were thick, and I rarely heard the usual sounds of life. The next night was quiet. The night after that, too. Just when I thought it was over, I woke around 2 in the morning to that same vibration. A tapping, then something heavier, like a dull knock muffled by cloth. I jumped out of bed this time, heart in my throat. I didn't open the door right away. Instead, I pressed my ear close and listened. The wood felt cold against my skin. I could hear breathing, or maybe it was the old pipes, then a sort of scraping sound as if someone were dragging their feet on the other side. Slow, measured steps, shuffling back and forth. My chest tightened, and I pulled away. I must have stood there, hand hovering near the lock, for a good 5 minutes. At some point, the noise stopped. Once again, I flung the door open, adrenaline making my pulse hammer in my ears. The corridor was empty. Same dim light, same silence. I glanced at the mirror. In its dusty reflection, I looked pale and uncertain, but alone. There was nothing to see. Nothing. I tried to brush it off as stress, or a prank. Maybe some neighbor was drunk and lost, knocking on wrong doors. But it happened again, and again, always around the same hour. Each time I grew a bit braver, or maybe just more desperate to end the mystery. I began to lean my ear against the wood longer, breathing quietly, waiting. That's when I started to hear the whispers or moans. It was hard to define. They were soft but unmistakably human. Faint grunts, a sigh here or there, like someone standing inches away, struggling with something heavy. The handle would rattle lightly. Sometimes I heard a faint clicking as if nails scraped over the surface. My body reacted in ways I couldn't control. I'd break into a sweat, my hands trembling and cold. My mouth felt dry. Each time I'd open the door, and each time no one. I began checking the corridor thoroughly. There were no fresh footprints on the old runner rug. No doors open, no windows at that end of the hall. Just that damned mirror at the far end, reflecting me as I paced, showing me the empty corridor twice, once in reality, once in glass. As days passed, I tried logical solutions. I stacked a chair against my door before sleeping, hoping to catch whoever pushed it aside. But come morning, the chair remained where it was. I tried leaving lights on inside my apartment, reasoning that would scare them off. It made no difference. The knocking, the shuffling, they continued. Eventually, I considered moving out. But I didn't have the money, not yet. The deposit here had drained what was left of my savings. I felt stuck, cornered in this stale, musty apartment. One quiet evening, I tried to relax in the living room, reading some old letters I'd found in a drawer left by a previous tenant. They were dated decades ago, yellowed, ink faded. Nothing too revealing, just mundane details about repairs, complaints about drafts, a mention of that corridor mirror. One line stood out. That mirror at the end of the hall still unsettles me. I swear, sometimes I see movement in it when no one's there. I felt a chill crawl up my spine reading that. It was just a scrap of paper, but it made me feel less alone in my fear, and that was not comforting. I decided to confront whatever it was. That night, I waited by the door, sitting on the floor, back against the wall. Around 2 a.m, it began. A gentle vibration on the wood, then the handle rattled. I held my breath and closed my eyes, listening. I swear I heard a muffled groan, as if someone were in pain. My stomach tightened. I pressed my ear closer, ignoring the panic that made my heart race. There was a dragging sound, fabric over wood, or maybe flesh over concrete. I imagined someone out there, crawling, pressing their face against the door. My hand shook as I reached for the doorknob, determined to open it quickly. But before I could, the hinges squeaked. The door, it began to open on its own. Just a crack at first, enough for a sliver of corridor light to cut into my apartment's darkness. I froze. My fingers hovered near the knob, uncertain if I should push it shut or fling it open wide. The wood creaked softly, as if nudged from the other side. But when I peered through that narrow gap, nothing. No shape, no silhouette. I could see the mirror's reflection down the hall. My breath caught in my throat as I realized something strange. The corridor in the mirror's reflection seemed slightly off, as if the lighting were dimmer, angles distorted. I pulled the door fully open. The space outside was unchanged, empty. But the door kept drifting inward, hinges whining, as though encouraged by an unseen hand. I stumbled backward, struggling to maintain composure. My pulse was erratic. Sweat stung my eyes. At that moment, I wanted to scream, to wake the neighbors, but I feared nothing would come out, that they wouldn't believe me, or worse, that no one was really there to help. The presence did not cross the threshold. It seemed content to show me the open corridor, to taunt me. I felt its intent, almost like a silent dare. Step outside, come closer, meet me where I stand. My legs were jelly, but I managed a few steps forward until I stood in the doorway, half in, half out. The hall smelled stale, like old wood and damp cloth. The mirror at the end caught my eye again. Its surface was dull, but I glimpsed something flicker in it, something moving behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, but there was only my apartment, messy and dim. When I turned back to the mirror, I saw just my own reflection, anxious, drawn, and hollow-eyed. Yet something about the angle of my face in the reflection looked wrong. My shoulders looked slightly hunched, as though resisting a weight pressing down. I swallowed hard and stepped back inside, slamming the door. If it wanted me to wander the corridor, it would have to wait. But I knew that doing nothing wouldn't help. I couldn't sleep after that. I paced the living room, checking the lock repeatedly. I considered calling the landlord, the police, anyone. But what would I say? My door is haunted? They'd dismiss me, and I knew it wouldn't show itself if others came. It was toying with me specifically. I felt trapped in some private game. The next morning, I covered the peephole with tape and shoved a heavy cabinet in front of the door. I hung a blanket over it as if that would help. That evening, I tried to distract myself by examining the old letters again. One slip of paper I'd missed earlier fell out from behind a drawer. A note scribbled hastily. "Don't look into its reflection. It needs you to see it." My hand shook and I read it twice. Whose handwriting was that? It didn't matter. It confirmed what I feared. The mirror in the hall played a role in this. Was this thing using the mirror to watch me or to lure me out? When night came, the knocking returned. Soft at first, then more insistent. I cowered behind the cabinet, but the door rattled, hinges squealing. I pressed my palm to the wood, feeling the vibrations run through my arm. I knew it could open again on its own. My temples throbbed and sweat trickled down my spine. Each breath was shallow and uneven. The fear was worse now that I understood there might be an intention behind it, something malignant waiting to be acknowledged. Then abruptly, the vibration stopped. I held my breath, listening. Silence. I dared to move the cabinet aside, just enough to peek. The door stood firm and closed. Curious, I leaned my ear against it once more. My heart hammered. For a long moment I heard nothing. Then a scratch, soft but deliberate. My entire body tensed. The handle rattled, and before I could react, the door creaked open a few inches, all on its own. My throat went dry. I had to face it. I had to see what was out there, or else I'd go insane. Pushing the door open, I stepped into the corridor, my legs unsteady. The hallway was empty but felt alive with tension. At the far end, the mirror waited. My steps echoed faintly. I approached, step by step, until I stood just a few feet from the glass. My mouth was salty with fear. I looked into the mirror. There was nothing beside me, no figure lurking in the corridor. Yet as I stared, I saw my reflection's eyes shift, just a fraction of a second, like it wasn't mirroring me perfectly. My reflected self stood too still, the mouth slightly parted as if to speak. A shiver coursed through me and I backed away, refusing to look further. I rushed back to my apartment, slammed the door, locked it, and pushed the cabinet back in place. Now, I can't sleep. I sit here with every light on, heart still racing. My skin feels different, more sensitive, like I'm being watched from every angle. I swear I see something move in my peripheral vision, especially near reflective surfaces. The window, a spoon, even the polished doorknob. I blink and it's gone, but the feeling remains. I don't know what it wants, or why it chose me. I do know that the door will knock again, and next time it might open wider. I felt its breath through the crack, smelled its damp, musty presence. I've seen my own reflection betray me. There's no neat explanation, and there's no escape, not yet. I am stuck here, listening in silence, waiting for that subtle tremor on the wood, that faint whisper behind the door. And I know when it comes I'll be here, helpless, heart pounding, trapped in this uneasy dance with something I cannot name. I grip the edge of the wooden bench beneath me and realize my palms are damp with sweat. My heart thuds against my rib cage as if warning me that I shouldn't be here. It's after 6 in the evening, and the new art gallery on Oak Street, just 2 blocks from my apartment, has finally opened its doors to the public. I'm alone in a long corridor of white walls and harsh lighting. The smell of fresh paint and floor polish mingles with something else, a subtle scent I can't place. Something sweet and cloying. I came here because I'd heard the gallery's reputation preceded it, a rumored private collection of paintings that the owners refused to comment on. I thought maybe I'd find a piece for my living room. My new place is too bare, and I've been meaning to add something personal, something warm, to counter the chill of empty walls. I never expected, well, This. The first paintings I saw when I entered were abstract landscapes, nothing special. But as I moved deeper, the corridors narrowed, and I started encountering more unusual pieces. I'm standing before one right now. A tall canvas, nearly my height, unframed, propped against the wall. It shows a group of human figures, all dressed in dark clothing, their outlines distinct but their faces blurred, as if wiped clean. Instead of facial features, each head is a beige oval, vacant and unsettling. They stand in a dimly lit street under a lamppost that glows pale yellow. It's not violent or bloody, just off. And I swear they're positioned so that their blank faces are turned in my direction. I swallow hard, forcing myself to step back. My throat is dry. The corridor is empty. No other visitors, no staff that I can see. Just the hush of the gallery's air conditioning. I pass along to the next painting. This one is similar. 3 figures sitting at a table, also faceless. The brushstrokes are rougher here, the background smudged. I feel their attention as if even without eyes they're staring through me. My stomach tightens. I move again, trying to keep calm. The sweetness in the air intensifies when I linger too long in front of these faceless portraits. It's like sugared fruit or rotting flowers, something pleasant that's gone stale. My knees feel weak. I need to breathe. Maybe I should find a restroom, splash water on my face. Yet, as I turn a corner, I notice a larger painting, placed at the far end of a narrower hall. The track lighting overhead buzzes softly, and the frame of this painting is ornate, gilded, and polished to a high shine. The surface of the paint is so glossy it reflects the light almost like a mirror. For a second, I see a distorted version of my own face in it. I approach slowly. This piece is different. There's only one figure here, standing in a dim interior space. Again, no face. The body is angled toward me, shoulders squared, as if waiting. The background is murky, but I make out a faint pattern, like wallpaper or a tapestry. As I lean closer, my reflection in the glossy surface overlaps with the figure's head. My heart flutters, and I jerk back. Did I see that right? For a fraction of a second, it looked like my own features were hovering where the figure's face should be. The back of my neck prickles. I scan the room, still no one else around. I try to swallow the rising panic. It's just a trick of the varnish, I tell myself. I've been on edge all day. Moving into a new apartment can do that. I haven't slept much, and my nerves are frayed. This gallery is poorly lit and strangely curated, that's all. I just need to calm down. I turn away, intending to find someone who works here. But before I can leave, I hear a soft rustling, like fabric shifting. When I look back at the painting, I notice something. The figure's shoulders seem slightly tilted now, as if it has moved a fraction of an inch to the side. My pulse jumps. That's impossible, right? I must be imagining things. I force a laugh that sounds hollow in the silence. Maybe I should head to the front desk, except I'm not entirely sure where the entrance is now. These corridors keep bending. The building looked modest from outside, but inside it feels larger, more complex. The scent of that sweet perfume follows me as I backtrack, trying to remember the path I took. I pass the series of smaller paintings again. My pace quickens. Something is different about them now. Previously, they all had blank ovals for faces. Now, in the corner of one canvas, I swear I see an eye. Just one eye painted in careful detail, a brown iris flecked with amber. It stares out from what used to be a featureless head. I rub my eyes, thinking I must be hallucinating. When I look again, the eye is still there. I move on, terrified to linger. Another painting. Previously 3 faceless figures around a table. Now, all 3 have eyes. 6 gleaming orbs track me as I hurry past. My breathing becomes ragged. The smell grows thicker, a sugary fog clinging to my nostrils. My legs feel heavy. I catch a glimpse of one painting's frame trembling, as though shaken by an invisible hand. I blink, and it stops. But now I swear I can hear a faint hum coming from the walls. I need out. I turn a corner expecting to see the lobby or some kind of exit sign. Nothing. Just another row of paintings, each more unsettling than the last. Eyes appear everywhere now, disembodied, hovering in the blank spaces of painted faces. They track me, glistening with wet highlights, their pupils dilating as I pass. My throat constricts, and I feel dizzy. I press a hand against the wall to steady myself. The paint on the wall feels slightly warm, almost pulsing under my fingertips. "Hello?" I manage to call out, my voice cracking. "Is anyone here?" No answer. My heart pounds louder. It must be a trick, some bizarre art installation, maybe hidden projectors casting illusions. But why can't I find anyone? Where are the other visitors? Where's the front desk? I remember the main corridor had a door near the front. I try to retrace my steps, passing the reflective painting again. This time I avoid looking directly at it, but even in my peripheral vision I see something that makes my skin crawl. The figure inside that painting is no longer alone. Another shape stands beside it, also faceless, but with two painted eyes turned toward me. I break into a half run, my footsteps echoing on the polished floor. My chest tightens with panic. I stop in front of a painting that I'm sure I haven't seen before, a small canvas with an ornate frame. The frame's gilded carvings look like twisted vines. Inside, two eyes hover in a dark void, no body attached. I feel the urge to cover the painting with something, to hide those eyes. I look around, hoping to find a cloth or even a brochure rack. Instead, I find a low table with a single pamphlet. I grab it. The gallery's logo is on the cover, but no names, no artist statements. Inside, just a few dates and cryptic notes. No clue about who painted these nightmares. I toss the pamphlet aside and keep moving. At last, I notice an emergency exit sign glowing faintly at the end of a hall. I rush toward it, no longer caring about subtlety. As I do, I sense the paintings behind me shifting. I refuse to look back. The sweet smell intensifies. My eyes water. I cough, almost gagging on the sickly aroma. I slam my hand against the exit bar. The door gives way and I stumble onto the street. It's dark out now. Must be close to closing time. The cool air hits my face and I breathe in relief. My shirt is soaked with sweat. I look over my shoulder, half expecting something to follow, but the door swings shut quietly. Through the gallery's front window, I can't see much, just a vague reflection of myself, illuminated by the street lamp. I hurry home, my footsteps brisk on the pavement. Inside my apartment, bare walls, a couch, a single floor lamp, I lock the door. My heart still pounds, and I can't shake the feeling that unseen eyes are watching me. I sit on the edge of my sofa, head in my hands, trying to slow my breathing. It's safe here, right? Yet, as I lean back and stare at the blank white wall in front of me, I can almost imagine those painted eyes superimposed there, following me still. I rub my face, still catching that lingering sweetness in my nose, as if the scent clung to my clothes and skin. The silence of my apartment offers no comfort. The overhead light buzzes faintly, and I realize I'm flinching at the smallest sounds now. I stand and approach my living room window. It's dark outside, the city lights scattered across distant buildings. In the glass reflection, I see my own face, tired eyes, a tense jaw. But behind me, in that ghostly reflection, I imagine a faceless figure standing in the corner just out of reach. My heart seizes. I spin around. Nothing's there. Just my empty apartment. I try to laugh, but nothing comes out. I realize I've brought something with me. Not an object, but a sensation. Those eyes, those painted eyes that had no right to exist, have etched themselves into my memory. I'm still being watched. I know it's impossible, but I feel it. I check my bathroom mirror. My reflection is normal, but I swear something about my pupils looks strange, as if they're darker, wider, more alert. I splash water on my face, but that doesn't help. The uneasy knot in my stomach tightens. I return to the living room and turn off the lamp. In the darkness, I sense movement, though I see nothing. The gallery's images are burned into my mind, The trembling frames, the sweet perfume, and those silent, faceless figures that seemed to grow eyes just for me. I can't explain what I witnessed, and I'm sure no one would believe me. But I know what I felt, a presence that lingers, that followed me home. As I stand in the quiet darkness, I dare not look at any reflective surface. I know if I do, I might catch a glimpse of them again. The eyes are out there, waiting, hovering in the recesses of my mind, or perhaps closer somewhere in the silence of my own apartment, watching me breathe. I notice it again on a Thursday night. I've barely kicked off my shoes, my back still sore from dragging that half-broken printer at work, when I catch the silhouette shifting in my bedroom window. It's faint, like a smudge of breath against the glass. I blink, rub my eyes, and that's when I see it. On the other side of my bedroom window, instead of the familiar sight of my own reflection, or the view of the street lamps from outside, there's a dimly lit room. A stranger's room. And it's not empty. I freeze, standing in the doorway of my bedroom, one foot still on the worn hallway carpet. The room beyond the glass looks old. Early 20th century, maybe. There's a heavy wooden table, thick legs carved into lion paws. A high-backed armchair upholstered in deep green velvet stands near a corner. The wallpaper is faded, mottled with brownish stains. The light is weak, coming from some kind of candle or an old lamp, casting trembling shadows. And in those shadows I see people. Well, shapes that look like people. They stand too still, as if painted. At least 3 figures, maybe more, all slightly out of focus, like I'm viewing them through warped glass or a veil of mist. My mouth goes dry. I hesitate, heart thumping, and step closer. The figures don't move, but they are there, waiting. I can't make out their faces. Something is off about their outlines. Heads tilted, shoulders bent at strange angles. I reach for the window latch instinctively to see if it's open. It's locked, and I mean locked in a way that feels permanent. My fingers curl around the handle and pull. No give. I try again, harder. It doesn't budge. Come on, I whisper to myself. I lived here for a couple of months now. Rented the place because it was cheap and quiet, a little worn down, but close enough to my job. I'd never had an issue with this window before. Yet it's as if something's welded it shut. I press my forehead against the glass, and my own ragged breath fogs it. For a moment, I think I see the silhouettes twitch. I jerk back, nearly stumbling over my bedside table. I tell myself I'm overtired. I was working late, sorting through dusty storerooms and dealing with that busted printer. Stress does weird things. But even as I think this, a chill creeps from my neck down my spine. The air in my room feels heavy, thick, as if I'm breathing in damp earth. I flick on the overhead light. The window doesn't show my reflection, just that strange room with those statuesque figures. I turn off the light. Nothing changes. They're still there. Whatever's happening, it isn't a trick of my bedroom lamp. I spend the rest of the evening trying to ignore it. I eat a cold sandwich and sip a cheap beer in the kitchen, not daring to look down the hall. My stomach is a knot, and I keep wiping sweat from my forehead. The silence in the house is oppressive. I have no TV, no radio. I can hear my own swallowing. I consider calling someone, anyone, but it's late, and who would believe me? I imagine telling Greg from work, "Hey, my bedroom window's showing me a spooky old room." He'd laugh it off or think I've lost my mind. Finally, I gather the courage to return to the bedroom. The image is still there, unchanged. The figures remain in the corners, barely visible. I approach the glass slowly, and I notice something. One of them, a taller shape, seems to wear lace gloves. Delicate black lace stretching along thin, pale arms. Another seems to have a face covered by a translucent veil, so fine that I think I can see hollow eye sockets behind it. My heart flutters, and I have to steady myself against the wall. I try something else. I tap the glass softly. There's no response. I lean in, focusing on my own heartbeat drumming in my ears. Suddenly, I swear I hear something on their side. A soft rustling, like fabric shifting. I back away and climb into bed, pulling the blanket up to my chin. I sleep with the lights on that night, drifting in and out of a restless doze. The next morning, the window is back to normal. Just my reflection, the curtains hanging limp and the pale morning sun coming through. I laugh at myself. Maybe I dreamed it. Maybe I was half asleep. I get ready for work, not thinking too much about it, until I notice something on the floor by the window. A thin scrap of old paper, yellowed and brittle. I pick it up carefully. It's blank, except for a faint watermark of a floral design. I have no idea where it came from. I don't keep old paper lying around. I toss it in a drawer and head out. All day at work, I can't focus. I keep picturing those veiled figures. That night, as I drag myself home, my eyes are gritty, my muscles tense. I step into my bedroom with a feeling of dread. The window is normal at first glance. Relief washes over me. But as I kick off my shoes and approach, the glass darkens again. The familiar reflection fades as if someone dimmed the lights behind the pane. Within seconds, that antique room flickers into view once more. My chest tightens. I can see the figures more clearly tonight. They're closer. Not by much, but enough that I can see the faint pattern on one's dress, floral lace. Another figure's veil seems thinner than before, revealing a mouth that's slightly open, as if inhaling. I can't help it. I shout at them. My voice cracks. "What do you want?" My words die against the glass, muffled and pointless. The figures stand silent, motionless. My heart hammers. I try the latch again, fingers sweaty, pulling and shaking until my arms ache. No movement. I grab a chair and wedge it under the handle as if that would help. Then I yank my old blanket from the closet and tape it over the window. I don't want to see them. Out of sight, out of mind, right? But that night, under the blanket, I hear it again. Soft rustling, maybe the faint creak of wooden floorboards. I don't sleep. I lie awake, feeling my pulse in my temples, imagining what's on the other side. On Saturday, I try a different approach. I bring home an old hammer from the toolkit I keep in the kitchen drawer. Standing before the window, I rip off the blanket and raise the hammer. But something in that image stops me. The figures are even closer now. One of them stands directly behind the glass, so near I can almost distinguish eyes behind the veil. Dark, steady eyes that seem to stare straight into me. The hand with the lace glove is pressed lightly against something on their side. I can't tell if it's a wall or another pane of glass. My hands shake so badly I can't get a good grip on the hammer. The idea of shattering the window suddenly feels insane. What if breaking it lets them in? That's the core of my terror. I sense that opening this window or breaking it would merge their world with mine. There's no reason for me to think this, but I know it, deep in my gut, as certain as gravity. If I open that window, they'll slip into my room, rearranging the air and my sanity. They don't want my life, they want my peace. They want to tether me between these two rooms, my cheap rented bedroom and their old dusty parlor. They want to ensure I never rest easy again. Over the next few days, my attempts at ignoring them fail. I drape towels, sheets, even a heavy quilt over the window, but none of it can erase the knowledge that they're there. I start sweating at random times, my palms damp whenever I step foot in the bedroom. I try sleeping on the couch in the living room, but that only makes me more jumpy. I swear I hear footsteps in the walls now. I wake up gasping, tasting metal on my tongue, my heart rattling my ribcage. I try calling the landlord. No answer. I leave a frantic voicemail about the window being stuck. I try telling a coworker that my place is giving me nightmares. He shrugs and suggests I move. I think about leaving, but where would I go? I paid a deposit I can't afford to lose. Besides, the idea of leaving that window behind, still connected to me somehow, feels wrong. Like if I run away, they'll follow. Don't ask me to explain. It's just something I feel in my bones. By the fifth night of this madness, they're so close I can smell something through the glass. An old, musty perfume, sweet and rancid at the same time. My stomach twists. I gag, pressing my sleeve to my nose. The figures almost fill the window now. The lace gloves rest against the inside of my glass pane. I can see the veins under the thin skin of their wrists. One figure tilts its head slowly, and I gasp, stumbling backward. They can move. They can move. I'm drenched in sweat. My legs shake and a wave of dizziness washes over me. I have to do something. I have to stop them from getting any closer. I grab the quilt, the tape, and I seal the window as best I can, layer upon layer until I can't see a single inch of glass. My heart pounds like I've just run a marathon. I know it's not a solution, but it's all I have. I push my dresser against the window, stacking books on top as though physical objects could barricade something that defies logic. I slump down by the door, breathing fast. My throat is dry. The silence is absolute. Then I hear the faint scratch of lace against glass like fingernails trailing over a mirror. My entire body tenses, and I press my hands against my ears. It doesn't help. The sound vibrates inside my skull. They're not going to leave. This I know. But they don't break in. They don't force the window open. They just linger, waiting. And I wait too, caught in a standoff with something I can't fully see. By morning, the sound stops. I push aside the dresser, heart pounding, remove the quilt. The window is normal again, just my reflection and the overcast sky outside. My stomach clenches. I can't tell if it's relief or dread. I notice my reflection is pale, thinner somehow. My eyes look sunken as if I haven't slept in weeks. I lean close, and for a split second I catch a flicker behind my own image, something pale and veiled, standing right behind me. I spin around. Nothing's there. I try to shake it off, but the feeling clings to me. When I touch the glass, it's as if my fingertips sink in just a fraction of an inch too far, like the surface isn't solid. I yank my hand back. There's no visible change, but I can't deny what I felt. I haven't left this house yet. I should. I might. But I'm here tonight, my heart racing at every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind. The window is normal right now, but I know that can change. When I close my eyes, I see their silhouettes etched into my eyelids. When I swallow, I taste dust and old perfume. I keep checking my reflection, searching for signs that I'm still myself. And each time I look, I think I see something else behind my shoulder, a faint shape, a waiting presence. They didn't need to kill me. They just needed to show me the other side of the glass. I sense that the boundary is weakening. And one day, maybe soon, I'll open my eyes and the window will show me that strange room again. Maybe then, without warning, they'll be inside, without breaking a latch, without a single spoken word, just quietly stealing the calm from my life, leaving me trapped between two worlds I barely understand. I stand here, trembling, wondering if I'm already halfway there.